The Labyrinth of Life. You have ended up on this page because your time has come. To come face to face with what you have been trying to run from for so long. Bad luck, failures, a prolonged black streak in life. I know these are not empty words for you, but the reality you find yourself in, whether you wanted it or not. Believe me, I am familiar with this state of despair. When plans fall apart, finances slip through your fingers, relationships with loved ones are strained, and your health fails at the most inconvenient moment. An oppressive feeling arises, as if this bleak period will never end.
At the same time, looking around, I saw my peers starting families, enjoying their children, buying homes, and living calm, measured lives. Observing this picture from the outside, I felt as if I had been washed overboard by a wave, and no matter how hard I scrambled, I just couldn't get back on the ship. For a long time, I searched for answers. Why is this happening specifically to me, and how can I break this vicious cycle? My searches and the mistakes I made more than once allowed me to thoroughly study the entire process, from the birth of bad luck in my life to a complete healing from it. And I discovered a universal mechanism that lies at the heart of these negative scenarios. It works the same for everyone, regardless of character or wealth, which means it is applicable to the life of any other person, including you.
So, make yourself comfortable, and let's begin to get acquainted with the mechanism that has led you to the negative scenarios overshadowing your life. The better you understand the principles of its operation, the faster and more effectively you'll be able to break free from the trap of bad luck you find yourself in today. Moreover, I will teach you to track the early signs of its formation in your life, which means you can take timely measures to minimize its negative manifestations in the future or prevent them altogether. So, are you ready to change your life? Let's go. Why are some people lucky and others not? Probably every one of us has asked ourselves at least once in our lives, why are some people lucky while others are not? Why, under seemingly similar conditions, age, education, aspirations, do life paths unfold so differently for everyone? Why does life hand everything to some on a silver platter, just like that, effortlessly, while others try to achieve similar results through grueling labor? Here's an example. I know a woman, by no means the most beautiful or popular girl, yet she marries well. Her husband is a successful careerist who found her and pursued her himself. She was careless about her studies and finished university with C's, but she still landed a prestigious job. A friend helped her out. And in life, everything just falls into place easily for her. Every year, she travels to different countries, exploring, relaxing, and discovering the world and cultures of various nations. The person simply goes with the flow, enjoying life without straining herself anywhere. You get the feeling that if she bought just one lottery ticket, the jackpot would end up in her hands.
And here is another example. Her classmate. Studying was hard for her, as she also worked part-time, but she still graduated with good grades. She tries to work hard, but she's just unlucky. Constantly, she'll twist her ankle on a flat surface. One problem at work is replaced by another. Her boyfriend turned out to be a freeloader, and after years of promises of a beautiful wedding and a happy family, he left her for another woman. Then her relatives get seriously ill. Then the neighbors upstairs flood her apartment. There is simply no joy in her life. She spins like a hamster on a wheel, seemingly playing a game of Final Destination with life as she goes. One gets the impression that this person was born to suffer, and even if positive periods do appear in her life, then, as if by magic, after a while, sudden problems and difficulties arise. Illnesses, troubles, losses, breakdowns,
accidents, etc., which reduce this positive result to zero. It's as if there is a certain ceiling in life intended for her, and once she breaks through it, the weather on the horizon suddenly changes, bringing with it cataclysms that require financial and other resources to fix the consequences, which ultimately guarantees she is returned to the boundaries set for her by someone from above. Or another example, a person who didn't even finish school, expelled for poor performance, borrows money from friends and opens a small stall selling fruits and vegetables next to a residential building. And after 2 or 3 years of what is by no means difficult work, he turns into a successful businessman, eventually building a network of similar stores in nearby districts and expanding his business. One gets the impression that the light forces are choosing an easy and unobstructed path to success for him, ultimately bestowing him with happiness and well-being. And here is another example. A person with a diploma from a prestigious university professionally calculates a business plan, attracts investments, secures the support of business mentors, but after 2-3 years of hard work, suffers a complete defeat, bankruptcy, and closure. But he doesn't stop there. After some time, he tries a new business, then another and another, but the result is always the same: bankruptcy, closure, and another disappointment. It's as if the dark forces were showing the person the way, choosing a difficult and thorny path guaranteed to lead to the abyss, even though he resisted it. And in the end, he still ended up on the sidelines of life. And after such cases, you can't help but start thinking that there is some force that guides a person on their life path. And if he is destined to be happy, he will bypass all adversities, and his life will be easy and full of joy. But if it's the opposite, then no matter what you do, everything will be bleak.
Karma? Fate? Or? I admit, at first I myself was inclined to think that it was all about fate, about some kind of predestination. After all, it's not for nothing they say you can't escape your fate. However, my many years of experience and deep research into this matter have shown that this is not the case at all. I personally managed not only to immerse myself in a scenario of total bad luck, but also, most importantly, to find a way out of it. In my 15-year practice, I was able to repeat this transition several times using very specific, conscious actions. And to do this, I didn't even have to commit bad deeds against other people, play nasty tricks on them, harm them, or cause suffering. Absolutely not. It turned out that all the necessary tools for forming a black streak in my life were already inside me. I just had to start using them.
And so, many people, unconsciously, out of habit, use these internal mechanisms day after day, without even suspecting the destructive consequences for their future. They do not wish themselves harm, but they themselves unintentionally attract failures, negative events, and those very black streaks into their lives. Moreover, with the voluntary consent of some people in my circle who complained about life's injustice and constant bad luck, a series of experiments were conducted. And what a surprise it was for me, and for them too, when after some time, upon completing certain tasks I gave them, their life circumstances began to change noticeably for the better. But I'll be honest, it's not easy for everyone, and it doesn't happen right away. In some cases, you have to work a little, and waiting for visible results can take time. But there is a positive aspect. Getting out of the black streak is inevitable. The main thing is to start taking action. But how? We will talk about this a little later. First, we need to get acquainted with the main culprit through whom everything in your life starts to go topsy-turvy, haywire, and ends up painted in negative colors, full of problems, failures, and disappointments. You might never have believed it yourself, but alas, practice shows it to be true. And the name of this culprit is thoughts. Yes, that's right, your thoughts. You probably just had an idea flash through your mind. I just need to think positively and everything will be fine. Alas, if only it were that simple. Positive thinking, in its popular sense, is often ineffective. If your glass is half empty, it is indeed half empty,
and trying to convince yourself otherwise just to appear optimistic will change nothing in the reality of your life, I assure you.
Or, if someone intentionally hurt you, you shouldn't suppress your feelings and convince yourself that this person is good and didn't mean any harm. Calling things by their proper names and even telling the offender everything you think is sometimes much better than bottling up negativity inside. Therefore, we will not be talking about a superficial, positive positivity, but about something much deeper. Let's remember, any attempts on your part to feign positivity will in no way protect you from the appearance of a black streak in your life.
In my practice, I have met people of whom it was said, "She was always cheerful in life, an optimist," but it turned out that this person still ended up on a path of bad luck and failure, and now that smile and joy in life had to be forced so as not to show once again that a real fire was raging in her life, which she could not cope with, trying to extinguish it with all her might. Therefore, optimism is good, but it is better if harmony with oneself reigns in the soul. Have you ever wondered what thoughts are and where they come from in your head? Probably not. We take them for granted. And yet, it is thoughts that are the key product of your subconscious, that very main manager that not only controls your body, but also largely shapes your life. Therefore, in the next section, we will carefully examine the nature of your thoughts, where it all begins, and also get to know this mysterious and all-powerful manager more closely, your subconscious. Let's move on. Chapter 2. The Subconscious.
The subconscious, your invisible guide through life. So, we have arrived at one of the most significant sections of the book, in which I will tell you about the subconscious, or, as it is also called, the unconscious. It is such a powerful manager of your life that you cannot even imagine it. Whether you are a happy person or an unhappy one is the result of the work of your subconscious. Whether you are a rich, successful person or a poor one is also the result of the work of your subconscious. In fact, all your current results in life, be it in family, finances, career, and so on, are the result of the work of your subconscious. It is what has, step by step, led you to where you are now. But for now, you don't even suspect this because you don't know how it functions, managing your life on autopilot. And what's more important, you don't know who can influence and even manipulate it and how. And believe me, this is very important to understand. But let's take it one step at a time.
To begin, let's turn to how scientists describe the consciousness and the subconscious, so we have a common starting point. The consciousness is often compared to a computer's RAM. It is a relatively small part of our psyche responsible for processing information here and now and for the near future. We often use the consciousness when we need to think something over, reflect on it, or make a decision. We do something while being aware of it. As they say, we act consciously or deliberately. Everything else resides in the subconscious. Self-discipline, focus, self-control, and critical thinking are the tools of the consciousness. The subconscious is like a vast reservoir of information located in our head. It stores all our memories, abilities, beliefs, automatic reflexes, and ancient instincts. Everything we have ever seen, heard, learned, and done is recorded in it. The power of the subconscious is truly astounding. It is known to control and manage all vital functions of the human body, from circulation to breathing and digestion. It is often the subconscious that helps a person by guiding their activities. Through thoughts, intuition, dreams, feelings, and premonitions, it suggests necessary ideas and solutions to us. Wants, I want, I don't want. Dreams, I have a dream. Ideas, an idea came to me. Emotions and feelings, motivation, laziness, boredom, apathy, and so on, are the tools of the subconscious. Imagine a person as a building with many rooms. The subconscious, in this metaphor, is the largest and most important room with a closed door.
All other rooms are open, but yourself, the consciousness, has no access to this room. It is in this room that all the control levers for your body and many aspects of your life are located. Instincts, reflexes, innate talents, formed beliefs, and all accumulated life experience, memory. Based on this entire archive, upon your request, from the consciousness, the subconscious instantly generates the most suitable, from its point of view, answers or solutions, and transmits them through the buffer of your thinking to another room for consideration by your consciousness.
At the same time, the subconscious is not a static archive. It is constantly self-learning. The more knowledge you have in your memory about the world, about the patterns of events, about the behavior of other people, the more accurate and varied the solutions it can offer for any specific situation. These complex calculations happen in fractions of a second, processing colossal arrays of data. But we, at the level of consciousness, do not notice this process. It all happens behind that very closed door. We only receive the ready-made solutions from the subconscious in the form of thoughts, ideas, desires, or impulses to act. For example, a small child, faced with danger, will choose an instinctive strategy, to cry to call for help. But as they grow up, they develop many more response options, to run away, to hide, to fight back, to call the police, and so on. And all this is thanks to the self-learning of the subconscious, by accumulating information about the environment and the behavior of other people in society.
Life on autopilot. Who is at the helm? It's important to understand that you, your conscious self, and your subconscious share control of your life and body in an astonishing proportion. Approximately 10% of control belongs to the consciousness and 90% to the subconscious. Just think about it. Most of the time, you live a life whose plan is prepared for you by the subconscious, but in 10% of cases, you can make your own adjustments to this plan and even object to it. Attention, in only 10% of cases out of 100% can you make adjustments and cancel any decisions your subconscious has made for you to execute in this plan. But the key point here is, and that's only if you realize it.
That is, if you realize you are acting wrongly in the moment, or that events are not unfolding according to the plan you initially intended for a certain period, only then can you engage the tools of the consciousness, critical thinking, self-control, discipline, by forcibly performing a self-analysis and making adjustments to this plan. But in practice, you will simply continue to go with the flow under the guidance of the subconscious, on complete autopilot, without even thinking about it. But nevertheless, you have your 100%. Where is it, you might ask? Here is where. All the sensations, feelings, emotions, experiences of living this, albeit largely programmed, life you experience 100%. That is, your life path plan is drawn up for you by the subconscious behind the closed door. But all the joys, sorrows, delights, and disappointments of following this path are experienced by you, your conscious self.
You could say that the subconscious controls your actions and choices in much the same way your parents did when you were very young. Remember, it was they who formed your plan of action and largely determined your life path. Which kindergarten to attend, which school, whether you could stay out late with friends, etc., while you were under their control. As a child, you didn't always choose this path, but you were the one who walked it, and all the feelings and emotions associated with this path were also experienced by you. If your parents purposefully created an atmosphere of love, joy, and security for you, for example, they loved you very much, spoiled you, and were well off, your childhood was most likely happy. Conversely, if the environment was unfavorable, for example, your parents were addicts, cruel, or simply indifferent, your childhood could have been filled with suffering. And no matter how you resisted, cried, or complained, You lived through the emotions and sensations that were prepared for you by this parental scenario. You simply had no other path back then. Over time, you grew up and got the opportunity to separate from your parents, to build your own route in life. Your parents can no longer directly shape your path, but it doesn't work that way with the subconscious. You cannot leave or separate from it. It is an inseparable part of you inside your body. Moreover, the work of the subconscious is structured in such a way that your consciousness, that is, you personally, doesn't even suspect that someone else can control your body. The main principle of the subconscious's operation is stealth and subtlety. Everything is arranged as if it is you, and all the decisions you have made in life are your personal decisions. On the surface, it looks that way, but in reality, it's much more complicated.
Example number 1. Procrastination. Imagine a common situation. You are a university student and you need to prepare an important report by the end of the week. You are full of determination. I'll come home, get right to work, finish it early, and have the whole week free. But your subconscious resists and signals to you through thoughts, emotions, and feelings, I don't want to, or I really don't feel like it, or I'll have time later. As a result, you imperceptibly slide into procrastination and start doing anything, scrolling through social media, watching series, drinking tea, chatting with friends, anything but writing the report, thus postponing the real task to sometime later.
The key point here, I don't want to, resistance, desire to postpone, is a direct manifestation of the subconscious at work. I have to, I need to, realization of necessity, sense of duty, is the voice of your consciousness. But as we can see in this example, the subconscious won today's battle, no matter how much you consciously tried to convince, force, or resist it. As a result, the day was spent on the phone, watching TV, drinking tea, and hanging out with friends, but not on writing the report. What happened? You, your consciousness, lost another round to your invisible manager, the subconscious, and most likely didn't even realize it. Yet within you an active struggle of for and against was taking place, but you didn't even notice it. As a result, you lived this day, or part of it, according to the script prepared for you by the subconscious, and your personal, conscious plans were once again postponed to tomorrow or sometime later. And this is how every day goes when you don't notice the work of the subconscious. In other words, you are allowed to have any personal plans for the day, month, or year, but whether they will be realized by you depends not only on your willpower, conscious efforts, and self-discipline, but also on the consent of your subconscious. And I assure you, even with willpower, in many cases you will still deviate from your intended plans if the subconscious says, I don't want to. Homework for self-discovery. In your spare time, try to recall all of your significant plans, goals, and dreams that you have had. How many of them did you ultimately achieve? Did you become who you dreamed of being? And how many plans were left somewhere halfway or had to be abandoned completely? These simple questions help to realize the scale of our invisible manager's influence on the trajectory of our lives. More examples based on instincts and reflexes. So that you can feel even more clearly how the subconscious is able to control you without your direct consent, let's look at a few examples based on the workings of instincts and reflexes. It is in such situations that the subconscious automatically and quickly seizes control of the body almost completely, without even asking for your conscious permission. Perhaps you will object, but wait, these are just instincts. Absolutely right, but what does that change? I will ask in return. If they are just instincts,
Does that mean there are mechanisms in your body that act autonomously, controlling you without your conscious permission? It seems so, right? If you are ready to admit this at the level of consciousness right now, it will be easier for you to understand. The situation with the subconscious as a whole is very similar. It's just that its everyday work is much less noticeable. It is carried out covertly, and therefore we usually don't notice it. But it exists, and it is continuous. Even instincts are, in fact, just one of the many tools controlled by the subconscious. Their peculiarity is that their manifestations are usually very bright, almost undeniable. Therefore, it is much easier for us to identify their work and feel it for ourselves than to track the more subtle and veiled influence of the subconscious in everyday life situations. So, let's consider these vivid examples.
Example number 2, aggression. Recall moments from your life or the lives of your friends, acquaintances, when you or someone else suddenly flared up, showed uncharacteristic aggression, and then, when the emotions subsided, thought with surprise and regret, "Why did I get so hot-headed? I could have handled it all much more calmly." What happens in such moments? At a certain point, at the peak of emotional intensity, the subconscious effectively seizes control of the body. It forcibly increases its share of control, conditionally from the usual 90% to almost 99%, thereby pushing the consciousness to the periphery, leaving it with only about 1% of influence and, as it were, blocking its ability to actively intervene. In such a state, you can, with your own hands, commit actions that are completely uncharacteristic of you in a calm state.
For example, in a moment of such a sharp, explosive outburst, and it's important to understand, this powerful emotion of aggression is formed inside you by the subconscious itself. It doesn't arise on its own. You might shout, insult, or even physically harm another person. It is this strong emotion that helps the subconscious to temporarily disable your conscious self and gain almost complete control over the body and thoughts. Let's remember, the emotion of aggression itself is formed by the subconscious. This is not a random outburst. It is its tool for instantly suppressing the consciousness and seizing full control of the body. But after a while, when the smoke clears and the emotional background subsides, the subconscious lets go of the situation, loosening its grip. Your share of conscious control returns to the conditional 10%. In simpler terms, the consciousness, that is, you personally, your conscious self, reconnects to the management of the body.
And it is then that you, as if waking up, begin to evaluate what happened from your usual point of view, using the tools of the consciousness: critical thinking, self-analysis, self-control. And as a rule, you genuinely do not understand why everything happened the way it did. Why were such destructive actions, such sacrifices, necessary? After all, it could have been handled with much smaller losses. Most often, we regret such outbursts, or we see another person who has done something similar regretting it. This is a very clear example of how your subconscious, at a critical moment, is able to completely seize control of the body without even asking for the consciousness's, permission. And then you are forced to pay for its actions, sometimes regretting what you did for the rest of your life. For example, ending up in prison for a long time or losing your best friend over a trivial quarrel.
A small but important clarification. When seizing control, up to a maximum of 99%, the subconscious usually leaves that 1% to the consciousness so that you can consciously see your behavior and process the stream of self-justifying thoughts from the subconscious about your actions. It was his fault. They drove me to it. I had to do it. I was right. But you cannot correct your behavior or stop the flow of these thoughts. That is, we see and feel our actions, but we cannot correct and control them, as the 1% power of the consciousness is insufficient to manage the body and correct incoming thoughts. In those rare cases when the subconscious seizes control 100%, the consciousness can completely shut down, and then the person acts in a state called a fit of passion or insanity.
Example number 3. Fear.
This is another vivid illustration of how your subconscious works. You can read as many kind fairy tales about cute little bears and watch cartoons about their friendship with humans as you like. But imagine that one day, while walking in the woods with a basket for berries and without any weapon, you come face to face with a real, live bear. At that very moment, all the fairy tales will instantly fly out of your head. It is then that you will feel with utmost clarity how your subconscious works, using the most ancient instinct of self-preservation. No matter how much you consciously try to convince yourself that the bear might be friendly or that you need to stay calm, you will feel with your whole being what an automatic seizure of control of the body is like. Your subconscious will be completely indifferent to your conscious arguments. The most you will be able to do is make a microscopic adjustment to your actions, using that 1 to 2% of conscious control out of the 10% available to you in a normal situation. But you will be, to put it mildly, very scared. And nothing will help you consciously turn off this fear, no matter how much you try to talk yourself out of it. Just imagine, a bear is coming toward you in the forest. You are standing there without a weapon. It is staring at you intently, but isn't moving yet. If you still believe that you have full control over your body and thoughts on your own, that is, consciously, try a little exercise at this moment. Looking at the bear, try to completely let go of the fear. Relax your body, which is paralyzed with terror, as the subconscious is already preparing it for flight or fight, and calmly count to 100. And then, as if by your own will, allow the fear to reappear. Do you think you will be able to not feel fear while looking the beast in the eyes?
I assure you, you probably won't even be able to count to 10. With a high probability, you will already be running for your life as fast as your legs can carry you, even if the bear has no intention of chasing you. The situation will return to your conscious control, and the chilling fear will recede only when the immediate danger has passed and the subconscious deems it possible to return control of the body and emotions back to you. That is, to your consciousness, and even then only within the 10% limit. Example number 4, jealousy. And here is another extremely telling example of how the subconscious can instantly seize control of your body and mind. Imagine the situation. You see your loved one talking animatedly with someone you consider a potential rival. They laugh, exchange glances, perhaps accidentally touch each other. And suddenly, completely unexpectedly for you, a wave of burning jealousy rises within you. What happens in this moment? Your subconscious, guided by the ancient instinct to protect its mate and continue the lineage, instantly activates a whole cascade of physiological and emotional reactions. All your attention, like a laser beam, focuses on the object of threat. Your heart begins to beat faster, your breathing becomes shallow, and obsessive thoughts arise in your head. Is he or she cheating on me? They are definitely flirting. How could he, she? They are standing too close to each other. Notice that these thoughts are generated by your subconscious, not by you.
It is important to understand, the emotion of jealousy itself is not formed by your conscious self, but by the subconscious. This is not a random emotional outburst. It is a tool with which the subconscious temporarily blocks your rational thinking and seizes almost complete control over your actions and thoughts. At the peak of jealousy, you can commit acts you would never do in a calm state. Make a public scene, say something harsh or offensive, ruining the evening for yourself, your loved one, and everyone around. At that moment, you are absolutely sure you are right, because the subconscious helpfully plants justifying thoughts. I have the right. I'm being betrayed. This must be stopped immediately. The subconscious, using the powerful emotion of jealousy, reduces your capacity for critical thinking from the usual 10% to that same 1 to 2% where you are still aware of what is happening but are no longer able to stop. And only when the emotional storm subsides, when the subconscious is convinced that the threat is gone, will it gradually return control to the consciousness. And then, having woken up,
and return to your normal state, you may recall your words and actions with surprise and shame. What came over me? How could I have said that? Why didn't I trust the person I love? Where did these unfounded suspicions come from? It is particularly telling that fits of jealousy can occur even in people who consider themselves rational and balanced, who sincerely believe that jealousy is foolish and I am not a jealous person. But when the subconscious activates this ancient defense mechanism, all rational beliefs recede into the background, and the person acts under the influence of a powerful emotion that they cannot consciously control.
Just as in the case of aggression or fear, jealousy clearly demonstrates that the subconscious can at any moment seize control of your body and thoughts, without even asking your permission, if it deems it necessary to protect what it perceives as vital interests. Example number 5. Danger. If a stone suddenly flies towards your face, your eyes will close automatically and very quickly. Your hands will raise themselves for protection. Your body will instinctively duck or swerve away from the flight path. All of this will happen in a fraction of a second, completely without the participation of your conscious self. And only after the danger has passed and your subconscious returns the usual share of control over the body to the consciousness, those conditional 10%, will you begin to consciously assess what happened. And perhaps you will even be surprised at how quickly and accurately you reacted, avoiding injury. This example also vividly shows that the subconscious not only controls and manages our body, but it also works significantly faster than our consciousness. In other words, while you are becoming aware of the danger and thinking about how to react, the subconscious has already done everything for you. Homework for the curious. If you are interested in this topic, search the internet for information from scientists about how much time the subconscious is ahead of the consciousness. How much time passes from the moment a thought born in the depths of your subconscious is transmitted to the consciousness and you finally become aware of its existence and can think it over. The results may surprise you. These examples, aggression, fear, jealousy, reaction to danger, related to the work of instincts, which are also controlled by the subconscious, clearly demonstrate situations in which even a person unfamiliar with these ideas can feel how the subconscious is able to seize control of the body. But it is important to remember that in our daily lives, the subconscious most often works in a more passive, hidden mode. If we take everyday situations, like the example with procrastination, and there are many such situations in each of our lives daily, you may not even notice its subtle but constant work. However, it is this unnoticeable work that largely shapes our life path.
Homo sapiens? You have surely heard the expressions, a person acts consciously or unconsciously, rationally or irrationally. All these concepts, in essence, describe the same dynamic, the interaction of our conscious self with that very powerful main manager, the subconscious, which prefers to work in a hidden mode. To act consciously or rationally means to try to follow a planned course, not succumbing to sudden, overwhelming emotions, consciously controlling or even ignoring them. This is when a person, at the level of consciousness, actively resists the work of the subconscious. In such moments, a person makes an effort not to allow the subconscious to completely seize control. This is the case when you were afraid, but you still carry out the task at hand. It's when you really don't want to do something, but you, overcoming internal resistance, continue to act according to the plan.
In essence, this is a conscious effort to hold the steering wheel, not allowing the subconscious to completely take over during an emotional storm. It is in these situations that a person consciously fights to keep the subconscious's share of control within the conditional limits of 90 to 95%, not allowing it to expand its influence to 99 to 100%. Yes, the subconscious can literally overwhelm with emotions, thoughts, and sensations, trying to gain complete control. But the person, their consciousness,
applies willpower to cope with this onslaught and not deviate from the intended path. This is like trying to drive a car on a slippery road when the steering wheel is trying to slip out of your hands. This is truly difficult inner work, and not everyone is capable of it in the moment.
This ability is often called willpower, and like any muscle, it can and should be trained. Interestingly, the main training of this muscle of consciousness often happens during adolescence, especially during school years. The habit of regularly completing academic tasks, striving for good grades, conditional A's and B's, overcoming "I don't want to" and "it's boring." All this helps us build up that very mental muscle. This gives us in our future adult life the opportunity, but alas not 100% guarantee, to maintain control over the impulses of the subconscious in some situations. I will note, not in all, but only in some critical cases.
The difference can be as follows. If for a person who, for example, got C's and D's in school and is not used to self-discipline, the subconscious in a stressful situation can seize control by 98–99% at once, then for a person with a more trained consciousness, this seizure might be conditionally 95–96%. It would seem the difference is small, but these few percent are the very gap that allows the consciousness to intervene, to correct an impulsive reaction, to stop in a fit of emotion and look at the situation more soberly, to act more reasonably. Otherwise, when a person cannot consciously resist the subconscious seizing control, they act, as they say, unconsciously or irrationally. Sometimes it's even said that they behave like an animal. That is, they find themselves under the power of the subconscious by 98–99%, guided by feelings and emotions in the moment, and the consequences no longer bother them. Whatever happens, happens, even if the whole world burns, even if I go to jail. What conclusion can we draw? The more actively a person trained the tools of their consciousness in adolescence, self-discipline, focus, willpower through overcoming "I don't want to," the more chances they have in adult life to act consciously, assessing situations rationally, and making balanced decisions. And conversely, if the tools of the consciousness were used little in youth, and the person lived predominantly on autopilot, guided only by the tools of the subconscious, "I want" or "I don't want," then in adult life they will most likely act irrationally more often. They will more easily give in to emotions, and in almost any, even insignificant situation, fall under the complete control of the subconscious. To put it even more simply, a person with a developed consciousness usually analyzes a situation using the criteria of should, shouldn't, right, wrong, expedient, inexpedient, and tries to calculate the possible consequences of their decisions. Whereas a person with a weak consciousness is most often guided by only two impulses, "I want" or "I don't want," without much thought about what will happen next. The main thing is to satisfy the immediate desire. Thought, the main product of the subconscious. Now we will look in detail at the very main instrument with which the subconscious lobbies for its interests, imperceptibly preparing us for certain decisions, conclusions, and even actions. And this instrument is thoughts. Have you ever wondered what a thought is and how it is born in your head?
At first glance, the concept of thought seems self-evident to us. After all, we all constantly think. But as soon as you try to consciously hold a thought, to focus on one thing, it turns out that this is incredibly difficult. A thought constantly tries to jump to something else, distracting our attention. We are far from always in control of our own thinking to the extent that we would like. Try a simple experiment. Fix your gaze on some object and try to think only about it. The longer you do this, the harder it will be to maintain your attention.
you will notice that it constantly jumps to something else, and you have to use willpower to bring it back. It turns out that a thought is not so much our property, but largely willful, and we have to use conscious effort to keep it on the object under consideration.
What is usually called a thought? In dictionaries, we can find various definitions that highlight its main aspects. Thought is an action of the mind, reason, intellect. Thought is also a sensory image. Sometimes, a thought is called something expressed in the form of a visual image, sound, word, or even sensation spoken aloud. There is a very profound statement on this matter. Usually, people consider thought to be something of little importance, so they are very indiscriminate in accepting a thought. But from accepted correct thoughts, all good is born. From accepted false thoughts, all evil is born. Thought is like a ship's rudder. The direction and, for the most part, the fate of the entire huge machine depends on a small rudder, on this insignificant board dragging behind the ship. St. Ignatius Bryan-Chaninov.
An incredible number of thoughts pass through each of our heads every day. Scientists have calculated that on average, there are about 6,200 of them every day. Some of them are formed into ideas, and then a certain part of these ideas finds its realization in our actions and deeds. And in the end, we get concrete results in our lives. Someone today, suddenly remembering that the store closes in 5 minutes, ran headlong for groceries and twisted their ankle on the way. And someone else, also rushing to the store, accidentally met an old acquaintance and received an invitation to an interview for a new, high-paying job.
Let's remember, about 6,200 thoughts arise daily in the head of an average person. And for each person, these thoughts are different. They generate different actions, which in turn lead to different results during the day, week, month, year. Just imagine, it is enough to catch and implement just one, but a different thought or idea from this huge mass of thoughts that arise daily in our head, and your life can change dramatically. The only question is, which one?
How are thoughts born? To this day, no scientist in the world can describe the very mechanism of the birth of a thought with absolute accuracy. All that modern science can do is to record with instruments that before a person becomes aware of a thought in their head, that is, before you personally notice it, there is already a certain activity in their brain, in the areas associated with the subconscious. The research data varies somewhat. Some record the formation of a thought in the subconscious half a second before its awareness, while others talk about 6 to 10 seconds. This probably depends on the specific conditions of the experiment and the complexity of the task, but that is not so crucial. What is important is something else. All scientists agree that before a thought appears in our consciousness, it has already been formed and prepared, cooked up, if you will, in the depths of our subconscious, behind that very closed door. And what is even more amazing, in experiments where subjects were asked to perform a simple action, for example, to raise a hand, without specifying right or left, scientists, using instruments that track brain activity, could predict in advance which hand the person would choose. They saw characteristic activity in certain areas of the brain 0.5 to 10 seconds before the subject themselves became aware of their decision and performed the action. That is, the sequence is roughly as follows. A thought or intention is born in the subconscious and is recorded by instruments. After 0.5 to 10 seconds, this thought is transmitted to the area of the brain responsible for consciousness. Only after this does the person realize, I want, or an idea came to me, or I made a decision to raise, say, my left hand. And only then do they raise their left hand.
It turns out that the scientists knew about the subject's choice before they did. This suggests that our feeling of conscious choice is in many cases just a beautiful illusion, a post-facto awareness of a decision that has already been made at a deeper, subconscious level.
Homework for deep immersion. If you are interested in these experiments and the conclusions of scientists, I highly recommend looking for information about the research of such prominent scientists as Benjamin Libet, John Eccles, Natalia Bektareva, and others who have studied these issues. Their work can reveal a lot of new things to you. Well, we have briefly touched upon the official scientific data. For practical purposes, the fact that a thought is an action of the mind or a sensory image is of little use to us for now. The most important thing we need to firmly grasp now is that thought is the most important and primary instrument from which absolutely all changes in your life begin, both on a physical and spiritual level. And its birth occurs in the depths of the subconscious, in that very room with a closed door, access to which is closed for our conscious self.
Further, a series of thoughts, logically or associatively linked together, can give rise to an idea. And an idea, if it receives emotional support from the subconscious, gives rise to sensations, feelings, and ultimately the actions or inaction of your body, depending on its content and strength. It is through this seemingly simple chain that the control of a person's behavior, their actions, decisions, conclusions, occurs without their direct conscious permission. This is a very secretive mechanism that works inside us on complete autopilot, but at the same time shares with us ready-made conclusions and impulses through thoughts entering the consciousness. And all a person can do, if the thought is not supported by strong emotions, is to think it over, analyze it at the level of consciousness, and possibly throw it out, forget it, if they consider it unnecessary, random, or unimportant. But if the subconscious believes that a given thought or idea is of particular importance to you or corresponds to its deep-seated programs, then such a thought will necessarily be accompanied by powerful emotional reinforcement. And such an emotionally charged thought is already very difficult to dismiss or ignore, although theoretically it is possible through significant efforts of the consciousness. As a rule, it is such thoughts and ideas that give rise to concrete actions, or at least prepare a person to perform certain actions in the near future. What is the most important thing to understand about thought? Thought is the main and primary building material of all changes in your life, both positive and negative. Any thought is born in your subconscious. You do not have the ability to consciously control the process of its birth. You become aware of it in its finished form. This mechanism works covertly and incredibly fast. A series of thoughts linked together in a sequential chain form an idea. And an idea supported by emotions gives rise to sensations or feelings and leads to actions or inaction. Thus, through this continuous thought process, controlled by the subconscious, your life path is formed over time, that very plan following which you have ended up where you are now and with the results you have. In the end, each person's life turns out differently. For some, it is filled with happiness and joy, and for others, with grief and suffering. And perhaps it was only necessary to make a choice in favor of a different thought or idea at some fork in the road of life, and your result today would be completely different. Let's remember, the results you get tomorrow directly depend on the choice of a particular thought or idea today. Imagine 5 or 7 years ago, on a very ordinary day, you were thinking about what to cook for lunch. The choice was to make soup or dumplings. There were no potatoes for soup in the fridge, but there were dumplings, meat, and other vegetables. It would seem the choice is obvious, dumplings. But your subconscious signaled, I don't want dumplings, and immediately tossed in a thought. Why not go get some potatoes? The store is nearby, and I'll take out the trash at the same time. And so you went to the store, bought potatoes, and on the way back, you completely by chance met a person. An acquaintance began between you, which grew into love, and now, after these 5-7 years, you are raising 2 wonderful children together, and perhaps are already thinking about a third. A beautiful family story, isn't it? And as life shows, not so rare. Or maybe everything turned out differently, and instead of meeting your soulmate, an aggressive dog appeared on your path and bit your leg. And now, after the same 5 to 7 years, you annually visit cosmetologists to get rid of the scar. Such cases, both positive and negative, are also not uncommon, even on the scale of a single large city. Is it really that simple, you might think? Is it enough to just choose a different thought, a different idea, and everything in my life will change? Alas, not everything is as simple as it seems at first glance. Your subconscious is the main manager and the main generator of thoughts and ideas, because only it has full access to your memory and all accumulated experience, on the basis of which all answers to life's challenges are formed. You have no other such helpers. But what if, in a certain situation, it offers you only one solution? What will you choose from then, if there is only one option for an answer? This is the main question, and the answer to it is the key to many changes.
How does the subconscious work? Let's peek behind the closed door. Imagine the subconscious as a huge, continuously bubbling cauldron, or if you like, as a boundless library with a perfectly tuned cataloging system. It constantly digests all information coming from the outside world and also analyzes every event that has happened in your life. At the same time, it does not just store data, but meticulously sorts it onto shelves, like a wise librarian. In its continuous work, there is an activity that can be called its favorite and most natural, to which it devotes the most attention. This is the processing of precisely new, previously unknown information about the world, events, places, or people. And along the way, in the process of all this work, it assigns each piece of information a certain level of significance: high significance, medium, low significance.
If in the process of this sorting, some information turns out to be close in meaning or association to an already stored event, person, or experience, the subconscious will certainly remind you of it through a suddenly arising thought, memory, idea, or even a fleeting sensation. Let's remember, the subconscious continuously sorts all incoming information about the surrounding world and the events of your life, putting it on shelves as in a library, memory, and simultaneously assessing its significance for you personally. But it gets the most attention and, if one can say so, pleasure in this work precisely from processing new knowledge and impressions. If the significance of any information or an event that happened to you was assessed by the subconscious as high, we will remember it for a long time, reliving the associated emotions again and again. If the assessment was of little significance, then we will very quickly forget about it, and it will not have a strong influence on us. To make this clearer, let's consider a life example. Imagine 2 people. Alexei is an ordinary driver who worked hard for many years and saved money for a premium class car. For him, this is not just a car, but a crucial investment in the future. He plans to work with wealthy clients, and his income directly depends on the prestige of the car. Maxime is a successful entrepreneur, the owner of a large business. For him, an expensive car is just one of the many attributes of his status, a pleasant but not vitally necessary acquisition. Now imagine that exactly the same event happens to both men. They get into a serious accident and their cars are beyond repair. For Alexei, this event will be instantly assessed by his subconscious as a catastrophe of the highest significance. The loss of the car for him is not just the loss of an expensive item, it is the collapse of all plans, a blow to financial stability, a threat to his future. The emotional response will be incredibly strong: despair, fear, perhaps anger, and a sense of hopelessness, because it will be very difficult for him to recover from such a loss. For Maxim, however, despite the obvious unpleasantness of the situation, the subconscious will assign this event a much lower level of significance. Yes, it is annoying. It will take time to buy a new car and settle the formalities with the insurance company, but for him, it is just a temporary inconvenience that will not have a cardinal impact on his life, financial situation, or peace of mind. He knows that he can easily buy a new car, perhaps even a better one than before.
This example clearly shows, behind the external, sometimes deceptive, similarity of people, each of us has arms, legs, a head, and so on, lies an absolutely unique inner world. And it is the subconscious passing any, even a completely identical event for everyone through the unique filter of personal life experience, values, beliefs, current social status, and a host of other individual characteristics that makes its own strictly personal assessment of significance for each person. What is a tragedy for one is just a minor nuisance for another.
The subconscious works non-stop, on complete autopilot, striving to make your life easier, to take on routine tasks while simultaneously digesting an endless stream of information about the surrounding world and offering, as it seems, optimal courses of action at any given moment. How? Through thoughts and suddenly arising ideas that are transmitted to you through the buffer of thinking into your consciousness. You are only left to accept or reject the proposed options, passing them through the filter of your mind, your conscious self.
Sometimes we are forced to consciously awaken the subconscious, forcing it to actively engage in solving suddenly arisen tasks. For example, you are at work and the director gives you an urgent assignment to draw up a vacation schedule for the entire department for the next year. Your consciousness, immediately switch to performing this task. At this moment, your subconscious is also forcibly activated. Having received a clear task from the consciousness, it will sift through all relevant information in your inner library, memory, in a fraction of a second, activate the necessary skills and knowledge in this area, and offer the most optimal solutions. As a result, you will open the necessary program, make a list of employees, take into account their wishes and production needs, and the task will be completed. This is an example of the activation of the subconscious based on external obligations.
Let's remember, having received a specific task from the consciousness, the subconscious, in a fraction of a second, will scan all the shelves in its library, memory, select only the necessary knowledge and experience, form an algorithm of actions based on them, and transmit it to your consciousness through thoughts and ideas, what you will need, where to start, what steps to take. At the same time, it activates the necessary skills and abilities to implement this task. And now you are already working with a fairly clear plan in your head.
However, most often, our subconscious prefers to work in a more relaxed background mode, dealing more with ensuring our inner life than with urgent obligations and requests from other people. Perhaps that is why we do not always love our work, especially if it involves constant emergencies and strict deadlines, or are not eager to fulfill the requests of other people, be they friends or acquaintances. Why? Because such unplanned, forced activation requires significant energy resources and tension from the subconscious. And it, as an independent and very economical system, prefers to deal with the current provision of your, and in fact its own life, at a familiar, measured pace, rather than being distracted by external irritants. As a result, it turns out that while you are living your ordinary life, doing some things, your subconscious not only participates in solving current tasks, but also in parallel, in the background, continuously studies the surrounding world through all the senses, hearing, sight, taste, smell, touch. It sorts new knowledge, puts it on shelves, and along the way can notify you of its finds through suddenly arising thoughts about events or people that are somehow associated with this new information. Sometimes this leads to a real mess in the head. You are focused on doing something, and the subconscious, in addition to thoughts related to this matter, periodically tosses in completely extraneous memories, ideas, or images. And all this mixes into a bizarre cocktail. For example, while you were cooking lunch, you could have simultaneously remembered and thought about many events and people that have nothing to do with the cooking process, such as this bubbling cauldron in our head.
Let's briefly summarize the work of the subconscious. The subconscious constantly processes all information coming from the outside world through our senses: sight, hearing, taste, smell, touch. It sorts the received information and knowledge onto the shelves of your inner library, memory, simultaneously assessing its level of significance for you personally. At the same time, its favorite and most natural occupation, to which it devotes the most attention, is the processing of precisely new, previously unknown information. It generously shares the results of this tireless work with us in the form of suddenly arising thoughts, ideas, emotions, sensations, even when we don't ask it for them at all.
Let's remember, receiving information and knowledge about the surrounding world and their subsequent sorting in memory is perhaps the favorite occupation of the subconscious. But special attention is paid precisely to new information. That is why most of us enjoy traveling to new places so much, meeting and communicating with pleasant new people, reading new books, watching new movies, choosing new things, enjoying the pleasant aroma of new smells, or trying new dishes. When we begin to think consciously, forcibly connecting the subconscious to solving specific tasks, it processes our request in a fraction of a second. It activates all our relevant skills, abilities, knowledge, and provides ready-made options for answers or solutions in the form of thoughts, ideas, and memories. We cannot know in advance 100% what result this or that response option from the subconscious will bring us if we decide to use it, but we always count on the best outcome.
Let's remember, the subconscious, when preparing a response to our request, always strives to provide the best, from its point of view, solution for the given task. In doing so, it tries to take into account the possible consequences for us in the future, and instinctively strives for us to get the best results. However, if we recall events from our past, it is easy to notice that not all thoughts and ideas, even the most brilliant at first glance, led us to positive results. The same is true today. Even the best idea proposed by the subconscious does not give an absolute guarantee that its implementation will necessarily lead you to a joyful outcome. The exact opposite result is also possible. For example, you might suddenly get the idea to go to the store for groceries, not tomorrow morning as you originally planned, but this evening. And in the end, it may turn out that you get into a car accident, damage your car, and will be very upset, long remembering that it would have been better to go in the morning. Or it could be the other way around. On the way to the store, you meet your soulmate, whom you have been looking for so long, and you will be immensely happy for a very long time, maybe for your whole life. Have you ever wondered what could be the reason for such unpredictability of results? Why, for some people, even with similar ideas and actions, life turns out successfully and brings positive fruits, while for others it leads to disappointments and losses? But behind these seemingly random results often stand quite definite forces. Remember, at the very beginning of this book, I gave you examples of how differently people's lives turn out, even if each of them put in a lot of effort, tried, and strived only for the good. But nevertheless, the outcome for each was different. Here is how it looked in those examples. One gets the impression that the light forces are choosing an easy and unobstructed path to success in life for him, ultimately bestowing him with happiness and well-being.
as if the dark forces were showing the person the way, choosing a difficult and thorny path guaranteed to lead to the abyss, even though he resisted it. And in the end, he still ended up on the sidelines of life.
I think you haven't often asked yourself such questions in this plane. Therefore, all that is usually left for us is to simply believe in the good and the best, hoping that all evil and bad will pass us by. Yes, we intuitively believe in good and evil, not because we read about them in children's fairy tales, but because we see their real manifestations in our lives or in the lives of our acquaintances and friends. And if something bad happens to us, or it seems to us that we've reached a dead end in life, many of us turn our thoughts to God, to a guardian angel, to some higher powers, hoping for their help and protection. But at the same time, we often completely forget that in addition to the light forces, many traditions and teachings also mention the dark forces. They also somehow coexist in our world and perhaps are also capable of influencing us. But how can they do this? And can they at all? That is the question. We will talk about this in detail in the next section, the dark forces. Let's move on there.
Chapter 3. The Dark Forces. On the influence of higher forces in our lives. In this chapter, we will explore the concept of higher forces and their impact on our lives in greater detail. I understand that for many, this topic may seem unexpected or even controversial, but my years of experience and practice have shown that this aspect cannot be overlooked if we truly wish to understand the causes of prolonged misfortunes and the black streak in life. Therefore, if you feel you're in such a situation, I ask you to approach this chapter with special attention and an open heart. Many of us have heard, whether from loved ones, books, films, or perhaps even through personal experience, that the world is home to certain light forces and dark forces. In this book, I deliberately group these concepts into two broad categories. But first, I will explain what exactly is meant by these terms so that, regardless of your faith or cultural background, you can grasp the essence of my message. By light forces, we will refer to everything that, across various traditions, is associated with God, guardian angels, benevolent spirits, archangels, the Holy Spirit, the universe as a creative force, apostles, and similar concepts that embody light, aid, and support. By dark forces, we will combine such notions as evil spirits, demons, the devil, Satan, malevolent entities, lower-order beings, tricksters, shapeshifters, forest spirits, Lucifer, and so on, everything that, in different cultures, is linked to destruction, temptation, and negative influence.
For the purposes of our work together, there is no need to divide these forces into smaller categories, for example, ranking demons or classifying entities by type. What matters is understanding their mechanisms and the influence they exert on our lives. The specific names used in various traditions are less important here. For simplicity, we will use the umbrella term dark forces. Let's remember, for simplicity, all destructive, invisible influences, malevolent entities, demons, beings, etc., will be referred to in this book by the generalized term dark forces. From this point onward, I will use the generalized term dark forces, and you, depending on your worldview, can interpret it accordingly, using more specific or familiar terms if you prefer. Good and evil. How do they manifest in our lives? In everyday life, the light forces are typically associated with good, while the dark forces are linked to evil. But what exactly do we mean by these terms? Good is generally an action or influence aimed at creation, benefit, improvement, or making people happier. In practice, good often manifests as specific acts of kindness toward us or others. Interestingly, good often enters our lives when we ask for help and it is granted.
Though, of course, there are also instances of selfless aid when we are in dire need but haven't even had the chance to ask. Let's remember, good, we often actively seek or ask for it rather than it knocking on our door uninvited. For example, you get lost in an unfamiliar city. You stop a random passerby and ask for directions. In most cases, the person will try to help, explaining the way, suggesting the shortest or safest route. Or another scenario, you slip on icy steps, fall and injure your legs so badly that you can't get up on your own. Passers-by, seeing your helplessness, will likely show compassion, help you up, or call an ambulance. Evil, on the other hand, is what brings harm, pain, suffering, misfortune, or destruction. In practice, we never ask for evil. On the contrary, we try not even to think about it, to avoid it. But unlike good, evil often enters our lives on its own, uninvited and unwelcome, suddenly and without permission, regardless of whether we want it or not. Let's remember, evil often enters our lives unasked, without seeking our permission.
For example, you are walking calmly down the street when suddenly you are attacked by muggers who steal your bag with valuables. Perhaps you tried to reason with them, begged them not to do it, but they ignored your pleas. They committed their crime and fled, leaving you in shock and despair. However, evil does not always manifest openly. Sometimes it enters our lives disguised as good. For instance, someone offers to help carry your heavy bags to your doorstep, but once they take some of the bags, they disappear with your belongings. But consider this. Do criminals attack just anyone? Of course not. They almost always carefully scout for potential victims who appear unable to resist, and only then do they act. If a potential victim looks strong, confident, possibly armed, or poses a threat to them, they're likely to steer clear. A similar analogy can be drawn with the higher forces. Help from the light forces often comes to us in the form of positive events, fortunate coincidences, sudden insights, and support, especially when we sincerely ask for it. Meanwhile, the dark forces frequently intrude into our lives like uninvited guests, manifesting through a series of negative events, unpleasant news, conflicts, and losses that leave behind pain, disappointment, and a sense of hopelessness. This raises a natural and very important question. Why do the dark forces come into my life and manifest through negative events? What have I done to attract their attention? And how can I avoid becoming their victim and prevent them from entering my life in the future? This is what we will discuss next, in as much detail as possible. Getting to know the dark forces. How do they operate? In this section, we will carefully examine the mechanism by which the dark forces can infiltrate our lives, begin to manifest, and even exert control over them. It's important to understand right away that this process does not happen as in horror movies, where some entity takes you by the hand and leads you to unfortunate places. Not at all. They act much more subtly, secretly, and imperceptibly, so that you may not even realize their presence. In the previous chapter, The Subconscious, I explained in detail how much your life depends on the workings of the subconscious, which essentially takes on the lion's share of managing your reality. At the same time, it always strives to help you, offering what it deems the best solutions in the form of thoughts and ideas. However, the subconscious can develop a vulnerability through which the dark forces gain access to the levers controlling your life. And most importantly, this vulnerability, this breach in the defense, is often created by you yourself, unwittingly, without even suspecting it. In doing so, you inadvertently harm yourself by inviting the consequences of the dark forces into your life. Let's remember, most often we ourselves
unconsciously make ourselves potential targets for the dark forces, not intentionally, without even realizing it.
Look around, and you'll notice that not everyone experiences endless negative events in life. For some, these are isolated, random misfortunes. For others, it's a specific difficult period, a week or two, but then life gradually improves. And then there are people about whom it's said, they've hit a streak of bad luck, or they're in a real black streak in life. This is when negative events follow one after another, frequently and over a long period, a year, 2, or even longer. Indeed, all 3 scenarios exist. But why does the duration of these dark periods vary so much? Largely because the manifestation of the dark forces in your life and their significant influence requires certain efforts and energy expenditures from them. If we examine the mechanism of their existence in detail, which we'll discuss shortly, you'll realize that it's not as easy for them as it might seem at first glance to exert deliberate influence on you.
Yes, they can easily latch on to a person by sensing their vulnerability. But this alone is not enough to control their life. To gain real access to managing a person's life, they need to embed themselves into their subconscious and access the most intimate process, the formation of thoughts, which is the subconscious's domain. This can be compared to your subconscious gaining new friends, helpers, or advisors who begin actively participating alongside it in shaping your life's path. They guide you through the same thoughts and ideas, but now periodically lobbying their own destructive interests.
Recall the example from the previous chapter. You plan to go to the store tomorrow morning because your subconscious suggested it as the optimal option. But suddenly you changed your mind and decided to go this evening instead, only to end up in a car accident, wrecking your car and regretting your decision for a long time. This is how the dark forces manifest, through seemingly your own thoughts and ideas which have actually been subtly adjusted or planted. Again, this is not a moment where they physically take your hand and lead you somewhere. Absolutely not. All the work of managing your life is done through your own thoughts, formed or distorted in your head. It's important to remember that they influence a vast number of people on this planet, and, figuratively speaking, they have a bird's-eye view. By analyzing many potential victims, they can calculate and arrange situations so that the right people meet in the right place at the right time, and this encounter is highly likely to lead to a new negative event for one or both of them. All these intricate manipulations are carried out through the process of forming or distorting thoughts and ideas in your mind, and you won't even notice it. They infiltrate your subconscious and begin making adjustments to your life's path. It's as if you were walking through a labyrinth and an invisible prompter keeps feeding you directions that serve only their interests, guaranteed to lead you into another dead end or trap. But why do they do this? What is their goal? Who are these dark forces, and what are their motives? In the context of our discussion, the dark forces are, first and foremost, energetic entities, and like any energetic structure or any living being, they require food, sustenance. For them, this food is a specific type of subtle energy generated only in the human subconscious through the experience of certain, typically negative emotions. They are called dark, not only because their goals are destructive, but also because they are invisible to the ordinary person. You cannot see or physically feel them. You can only sense their manifestation in your life through persistently churning negative, obsessive thoughts, as well as through a series of inexplicable negative events that bring increasing pain, disappointment, and despair.
And the longer you dwell on these events in a negative light, cultivating and generating negative emotions, fear, anger, resentment, rage, despair, despondency, etc., the deeper you sink into a streak of misfortune and failure, the so-called black streak of your life.
How do we become targets for the dark forces? Throughout our lives, we experience a wide range of emotions and, accordingly, emit different qualities of energy. It is precisely the experience of negative emotions, fear, anger, despair, resentment, rage, envy, etc., fueled by constant rumination on corresponding negative thoughts, that attracts the dark forces into our lives. Remember the example of criminals scouting for potential victims? The dark forces operate in a very similar way, scanning the environment for the negative energy emitted by a person immersed in negative thoughts and emotions.
This process can be compared to how a mobile phone works. When you turn on your phone, it begins emitting radio signals to locate the nearest base station of your network provider. These signals are picked up by cell towers, which identify your phone and establish a connection. When the phone is turned off, it stopped transmitting signals and becomes invisible to the network. The base stations can no longer detect or maintain contact with it. The situation with the dark forces is very similar. When you start actively churning negative thoughts in your mind, you begin emitting a specific type of energy that makes you visible to these forces. They detect this signal and attempt to establish a stable connection with your subconscious.
Let's remember, brief, isolated negative emotions or fleeting negative thoughts only allow the dark forces to notice us and possibly latch on to us as potential victims. But this is still not enough to gain full access to the subconscious, to open that closed door and begin managing the process of forming thoughts and ideas in our minds alongside our subconscious. For this, they need a stable, long-term connection, and this can only form if we frequently and persistently chew over, dwell on negative thoughts and memories, ideally day after day, even with small breaks. Only under such conditions can the dark forces establish a sufficiently strong connection with our subconscious.
Otherwise, if our negative emotions and rumination are short-lived and rare, they may still identify us among billions of people on the planet, notice our signal, but they cannot establish a stable connection with our subconscious and settle in for the long term. This means they're unlikely to embed themselves into the thought-forming process and begin actively influencing our life's path alongside our subconscious. This is why it's so crucial for them that we experience negative emotions for as long as possible and, especially, not just for a day, but regularly, day after day. This gives them the opportunity not only to maintain a stable connection with our subconscious, but also to continuously feed on our negative energy. It is this prolonged experience of negative emotions through constant dwelling on negative events that have happened to us that ultimately helps them breach our defenses, open that closed door to our subconscious. Once inside, they begin creating a favorable environment for their continued comfortable stay and nourishment. And then, once they've securely settled in within our subconscious, they can fully attempt to control events on our life's path. They do this through the process of forming thoughts and ideas, now working alongside our subconscious, but always prioritizing their own destructive interests and maintaining this favorable, that is, negative for us, environment in their new, comfortable home. Meanwhile, our life gradually but surely begins to take on darker and more negative hues, sinking deeper into that black streak. A favorable environment. How do we build a home for the dark forces? We've established that the dark forces can settle in our subconscious only if we ourselves, through prolonged chewing over negative thoughts and emotions, create a stable channel of communication for them.
But what happens next? Once inside, they begin creating and maintaining what can be called a favorable environment for their existence. What is this? A favorable environment is a state of your inner world where negative energy is constantly present and cultivated. This happens when something unpleasant occurs in your life, and instead of processing it, drawing conclusions, and moving on, you get stuck on it, chewing it over day after day, painting it in increasingly darker tones.
In other words, you essentially sacrifice your present, your tasks, plans, joys, and spend all that time and energy dwelling on the same negative situation, allowing the negative event to consume all your attention. You replay it over and over, carrying this process into the next day, then the next, and so on. It is this prolonged process, when you chew over negativity for more than 2 or 3 days straight, denying yourself emotional peace, that triggers the formation of that favorable environment in your subconscious. This is a signal to the dark forces that they can begin setting up their home. They gradually embed themselves into the thought-forming process, becoming advisors to your subconscious and pursuing their own goals.
Why is our negativity so important to the dark forces? As a result, your life begins to slowly but surely spiral into a negative scenario. Why? Because for their home inside your subconscious to remain comfortable for them, they need to constantly maintain a certain level of negative energy. The thing is, our subconscious is very wise. After processing information about an event and assigning it a certain level of significance, as we discussed earlier, filing it away in its library, this significance begins to gradually fade. The energetic charge of an event, whether super positive or super negative, naturally dissipates over time. This is like a hot kettle cooling down or a phone battery slowly draining when unused.
This process is continuous. For example, something unpleasant happens to you. You dwell on it, think about it, and during this time, the dark forces, if they're already connected to you, feed on this energy. But if you have other things to do, work, hobbies, family, meaning you simply don't have time to constantly chew over this negativity, you eventually distract yourself, shift your focus. Then, the energy of the event's significance begins to fade. With every minute, hour, and day, the emotional charge weakens. The more time passes, the less the event resurfaces in your mind and reminds you of itself. Over time, the vividness and pain of the memory give way to neutrality. The energy of the event in your subconscious is fully expended, and its influence on your life practically vanishes. Hence the saying, time heals.
And if during this same period positive events begin appearing in your life to which your subconscious assigns high positive significance, this bright, constructive energy begins to neutralize or displace the remnants of negativity even faster. As a result, the dark forces don't even get a proper meal to sustain themselves, and this, of course, displeases them greatly. Your subconscious stops generating food for them, and they begin to feel very uncomfortable in their home, losing their stable connection with it. Losing control in their cozy dwelling is the last thing they want, so their task is constant, diligent work to maintain their influence. They absolutely need new negative events, disappointments, and conflicts to keep appearing in your life, forcing you to chew over negative thoughts and thereby sustain this favorable environment for them. At the same time, they try to shield you from positive events that could disrupt their feeding ground.
To achieve this, they worked in 2 directions. Shaping the future. Through thoughts and ideas, they tried to steer you along a life path where new negative events are highly likely to occur. For example, by planting the idea of going to a specific place at the right time, where trouble, an aggressive dog, a dishonest person, or simply an annoying mishap likely awaits. holding on to the past. Simultaneously, they try to constantly draw your attention back to old grievances, fears, and disappointments, so you continue generating negative energy, recharging already faded events. Their main goal is to keep you chewing over any negative event for as long as possible, preventing its energetic charge from fully dissipating. Their true feast begins when the number of such negative events in your life starts growing, creating a continuous stream of food.
If you've noticed that one negative event in your life is followed by another, then a third, forming a chain, this is a clear sign that you've likely fallen under their influence. And through constant rumination on negative thoughts, you, unwittingly, help them entrench themselves deeper in your subconscious. But how exactly do they manage to so cleverly construct our life's path, ensuring we stumble into misfortunes? To understand this, we need to look at our lives from a completely different perspective. We need to imagine it as a vast, intricate labyrinth. This is precisely what we'll explore in the next chapter.
Chapter 4. The Labyrinth.
Life as a labyrinth. Who writes the rules of the game? Imagine that our entire life is a vast labyrinth with endless corridors, crossroads, and forks. Every day we choose which path to take, unaware of what awaits us around the next corner. It could be a joyful encounter, a valuable discovery, a new opportunity, or a dead end, an unpleasant clash, a disappointment. Here's the most intriguing part. While inside the labyrinth, you cannot see it in its entirety. You cannot peek around the corner or climb the walls to look down and understand where a particular path leads. All you can do is move forward, guessing, speculating, listening to your thoughts and feelings, hoping you've chosen the right way.
But the dark forces, if they've already established a stable connection with your subconscious, have one enormous unfair advantage. They exist outside your labyrinth. They see it from above, as if it were a map. To them, you are an open book. They know exactly where an aggressive dog awaits you around one corner and where a future business partner might be found around another. They see where the treasure, a joyful event, lies, and where the trap, a negative event, is hidden. Most importantly, they begin influencing your choices in the labyrinth through the process of shaping your thoughts.
Controlling your path in the labyrinth of life. When a negative event occurs in your life, followed by a series of new misfortunes, this is a clear sign that you've already fallen under the influence of the dark forces. By constantly dwelling on negative thoughts, you help them entrench themselves in your subconscious and influence the formation of new ideas in your life. Once they gain the ability to participate in creating your thoughts, the dark forces begin steering your life, increasing the likelihood of negative events and reducing the chances of positive encounters and experiences. As the saying goes, they have a bird's-eye view. They know precisely when and where you're most likely to run into trouble. All they need to do is guide you there, for example, by planting a sudden idea to go somewhere.
You might think, why not visit that cafe I haven't been to in a while, without suspecting that this your thought was skillfully planted so that you'd encounter someone who would ruin your mood for the next week. By acting on what seems like your own decision, you may, in fact, be following a route laid out for you by the dark forces, heading straight into another dead end, another disappointment. By creating a favorable environment for the dark forces and letting them into your life, even unknowingly, you gradually lose control over your life's path. More and more negative events appear on your journey due to poor decisions rooted in thoughts shaped by their influence.
To them, you are like a marker on a map where they can see everything. On this map, there's you and various places with people or situations where, if you come near, you'll very likely receive another dose of negativity. A dog might bite you, a criminal might rob you, or some other unpleasant event might occur. And once again, you'll chew over these new negative thoughts, maintaining the favorable environment for the dark forces. This black streak can last a very long time because the dark forces clearly see where and when you could meet people or experience events that would bring you joy and positive emotions, thereby diminishing their influence in your subconscious. And they will do everything to prevent this. Once you become their victim, breaking free from their grip becomes harder with each passing day, especially if you take no action and let things run their course.
The battle for control over your labyrinth. Maintaining a stable connection with your subconscious and feeding on your negative energy is no easy task for the dark forces. It requires constant effort. If it becomes increasingly difficult for them to create negative situations on your path, traps you keep falling into, they will eventually lose the ability to influence the formation of your thoughts. This means they'll lose their home and source of nourishment. This happens because the emotional significance of events gradually diminishes over time, like a battery losing its charge, weakening its impact. As a result, you simply run out of negative material to chew over. The favorable environment for the dark forces begins to crumble, and they lose control over your thoughts, and thus over the events in your life.
Obviously, they don't like this at all, so they work diligently every day to create a comfortable setting inside your subconscious. That's their job. Their activity is similar to our daily lives. For example, when you buy an apartment, the first thing you do is renovate. Bring in furniture and appliances, creating a comfortable environment for yourself. After all, no one wants to live among bare walls. Then you regularly maintain order and cleanliness to keep your home pleasant. Dust constantly accumulates in the apartment, everything gradually gets dirty, and you start feeling uncomfortable. So you make an effort to clean up and restore coziness. The dark forces follow the same principle. They live and feed on the negative energy you emit. But if this energy supply stops over time, they'll grow uncomfortable, lose their connection with your subconscious, and be forced to leave. They desperately want to avoid this. To prevent it, by embedding themselves in the process of forming your thoughts and ideas, they begin chiming in, lobbying for their interests, and increasing the likelihood of new negative events in your life. These events will once again make you dwell on them for a long time, generating negative energy and maintaining a favorable environment for the dark forces. They won't willingly abandon their cozy home, just as you wouldn't leave your house for no reason. In their desire for comfort, they are no different from us. The tactics of the dark forces in the labyrinth of life. Looking around, you've probably noticed happy, joyful people and wondered, why can't I live like that? I want that too. And your subconscious tries to offer ideas on how to change your situation. But here's the problem. If you're already under the influence of the dark forces, they will participate in shaping these thoughts, and most likely, the ideas they suggest will lead you to another dead end and even greater disappointment. Why? Because the dark forces don't want to leave their dwelling where they receive steady nourishment and will do everything to stay there as long as possible.
This means that if you've been stuck in a black streak of misfortune and bad luck for a long time, even the most brilliant idea that comes to mind today will likely lead you to another dead end, simply because this idea has been worked on by forces with far greater abilities to analyze information and foresee events than you possess. As a result, your life becomes increasingly sad and bleak, while theirs, on the contrary, is a celebration of comfort. A cruel paradox arises. You strive for happiness and joy, while they, to thrive, need the exact opposite, for your life to be painted in dark tones.
At the same time, they may employ different tactics depending on your personal traits and vulnerabilities.
Sometimes they exploit vices. For example, if someone is prone to arrogance and pride, they might initially help them by guiding them towards success and power through seemingly brilliant but risky ideas. The person rises higher and higher, their ego grows, and with it their sense of superiority over others. Meanwhile, the dark forces bide their time, waiting to lead them to the edge of a cliff and then plant one final fatal thought that will make them take the wrong step and plunge into the abyss. The higher the rise, the harder the fall. The greater the grief, despair, and consequently, the more abundant the food for them.
We've all heard stories of sudden downfalls of seemingly invincible people, bankruptcies, prison, severe illness, accidents, betrayal by loved ones. Such stories often happen to people radiating the negative energy of arrogance. This is a clear sign that the person is under the influence of the dark forces, and a heavy price in the form of great sorrow is imminent. The rich also cry. This isn't just a saying, but a reflection of real-life situations. Wealthy people have no special protection against the dark forces, because they don't want your money. They want the energy of your negative emotions, anger, grief, disappointment, and the like.
For people prone to greed, envy, resentment, or despondency, the tactic may differ. They don't need one big explosion. It's more profitable for them to maintain a constant, routine stream of minor misfortunes. They'll suggest ideas that lead the person to bad deals, make them trust unreliable people, or direct them to buy the exact product that turns out to be defective. This steady trickle of minor negativity, which the person blames on bad luck or cheaters, keeps them perpetually irritated and dissatisfied, a stable source of nourishment for the dark forces.
For those prone to fear, anxiety, and suspicion, a special tactic is employed: the confirmation through route method. Their approach isn't to create danger out of thin air, but to skillfully guide the person to where he'll find confirmation of his fears. For example, a man is afraid of dogs. Normally, he walks home along a well-lit main street. But today, a rational thought suddenly pops into his head. Why not take a shortcut through that vacant lot behind the garages? It'll be faster. He follows his own idea, and it's precisely in that vacant lot where stray dogs often gather that he encounters a barking pack. The dark forces didn't create those dogs, they merely suggested the worst possible route, presenting it as the most advantageous one.
Or, a man dreads confrontations and feels anxious about returning a defective product to the store. A thought occurs to him. I should go right now, during lunch break, to get it over with quickly. He arrives at the store at peak hours, encounters exhausted and irritable staff, waits in a long line, and ends up in a far more stressful and unpleasant situation than if he'd gone at a quieter time. Each such seemingly independent decision that backfires serves as proof. See, the world really is dangerous. Your fears are justified. Gradually, the man's world shrinks to the size of his fears. He starts avoiding any potentially risky routes or situations, and this perpetual state of anxiety becomes a reliable and inexhaustible source of nourishment for the dark forces.
Other times, they use the most insidious tool of all: inaction. Through laziness, apathy, or procrastination, they can make you fail to do something important. For example, you were too lazy to meet up with friends and missed the chance to meet someone who could have offered you your dream job. Or you skipped work today out of laziness and got fired, fined, or severely reprimanded, adding another dose of negativity to your life. Or
You postponed a doctor's visit, and the illness progressed to a more severe stage. The result is the same: disappointment and negative emotions.
How to escape the labyrinth. So, it turns out that a person under the influence of the dark forces finds themselves in a kind of vicious circle. They try to escape the black streak, but any ideas or plans they come up with are likely already tainted by the influence of the dark forces and will probably lead them to another dead end. Life becomes like wandering endlessly through a hostile labyrinth where you're not the one writing the rules. Breaking free from this influence becomes harder with each passing day, especially if you do nothing and let things drift. Some people live like this almost their entire lives, growing accustomed to misfortune and accepting it as the norm.
But there is a way out, and it doesn't involve learning to outplay the dark forces at their own game. It lies in breaking that very stable connection that gives them the ability to influence you. You need to evict them from their comfortable home in your subconscious and learn to maintain your inner world in such a state that they have nothing to latch onto. Even after this, there may be moments when you briefly send out a signal, like that mobile phone that connects to the network for a few minutes. But this fleeting contact will be insufficient to establish a stable connection with you, because now you'll know how it works and understand the consequences. You'll be armed with knowledge and techniques that allow you to quickly disconnect from this network, silence this signal, and return control of your life to your own hands. This is precisely what the next steps in our book are about. We'll learn to recognize the signs of such influence in ourselves and then master tools that will reliably help you sever this vicious connection and finally begin building your life's path the way you want it, not the way the dark forces have planned it for you. So before we can chart our own course, we need to conduct an audit of our inner world to identify exactly where those cracks in our defenses are, the ones through which they gain influence. This is our first and most crucial step. Proceeding to Step 1, Self-Diagnosis.
Chapter 5. Step 1. Self-Diagnosis. How to understand if you are in the labyrinth and who holds the map. In the previous chapter, we looked at life as a huge, tangled labyrinth. We talked about the fact that in this labyrinth there are invisible players, the dark forces, who, seeing the entire map from above, can imperceptibly, through thoughts that arise in our head, guide us into dead ends, towards disappointments and losses. Realizing this can cause anxiety and even fear. But knowledge is not a reason for despair. It is strength. And the first step to breaking out of any labyrinth is to honestly determine your current location. It's impossible to plot a new route without understanding exactly where you are now. This is precisely what our first practical step is dedicated to: self-diagnosis. At this stage, you will have to look at yourself and your life as if from the outside, to see the very signs that unmistakably indicate that you have fallen under the influence of the dark forces.
The main symptom: endless inner noise. The very first and most important sign that the dark forces have not just latched onto you, but have already established a stable connection with your subconscious and set up their comfortable little house in it, is your inner state. If you find that you often and for long periods ruminate on negative thoughts in your head, if you catch yourself returning again and again to old grievances, fears, and disappointments, if you frankly dislike your life and you have a persistent feeling that you are in a black streak, in a vicious cycle of bad luck and failure, this is the main symptom. This means that the dark forces are already actively participating in shaping your thoughts and ideas, leading you through the labyrinth of life on a route that is advantageous to them, from one negative event to another, while diligently steering you away from joyful and bright moments.
Portrait of a person under the influence of the dark forces. This internal state inevitably manifests itself externally. You can easily notice such signs not only in yourself, but also in your acquaintances who often complain about being constantly unlucky. After talking with such a person, you will not only see how unfavorably their life is currently unfolding, but you will also be able to predict with high accuracy what awaits them tomorrow: another disappointment, failure, or conflict. Sometimes people say about such individuals, grumbles like an old woman, or has turned into a walking negativity. You can recognize such a person who is under the influence of the dark forces by a number of signs.
Appearance: almost always furrowed brows, pursed lips, a deep crease between the eyebrows, the wrinkle of discontent. A smile is a rare guest on their face, and if it does appear, it often looks forced, crooked, or sarcastic. Their gaze is either glassy, immersed in their own gloomy thoughts, or, on the contrary, darting, looking for reasons for criticism and dissatisfaction. Speech and vocabulary: their favorite phrases are, "Everything is bad," "As always, nothing good," "Of course, I knew it," "Those again." They often use toxic generalizations: "Everyone around is an idiot," "You people always," "Nothing works," "No one can be trusted," "Everything is always wrong for me, not like for other people." In their perception, the world is painted in black and white tones, where there is significantly more black.
Devaluation of the positive. They masterfully devalue any positive events. If they are given a gift, they will say, "Why did you spend the money? I already have one of these." If the weather is beautiful and sunny, they will complain about the heat or that it's going to rain soon anyway. For them, there is always a fly in the ointment, which they will certainly notice. Rejection of compliments. To the compliment, "You look great," they will reply, "I just washed my hair, otherwise everything is terrible." Or, "Come on, you just haven't seen me in a while." The inability to accept positive feedback is a clear marker of the influence of the dark forces.
Joy in others' failures, schadenfreude. They may experience hidden or even obvious satisfaction when someone else fails at something. "I told you he wouldn't succeed," they say with a note of triumph. Other people's problems become confirmation of their gloomy worldview. Constant comparisons not in their favor. They are always comparing with something worse. The neighbor's car is better. And if you buy the same one, they'll say, "But his boss already has a newer model." This person is never satisfied with the current state of affairs. Shifting responsibility. They often blame others or relatives for their problems. "Nobody understands me. Everyone is against me." For them, others are always to blame, but never themselves.
Dramatization of the mundane. Minor everyday troubles are transformed in their interpretation into catastrophes of cosmic proportions. A broken cup can become the reason for an hour-long monologue about how everything in life is going wrong. Cyclical negative themes. They return again and again to the same negative topics, even when the conversation has long since moved on. Like a broken record, they repeat the same complaints.
Energy vampirism. After communicating with such a person, you feel empty, as if all your energy has been drained. This is no accident. Negative energy really does exhaust those around it. Negative anticipation. They constantly expect the worst. "I'm sure I won't get the promotion. This trip is definitely going to be terrible. I'm definitely going to fail this interview." And when the negative thing actually happens, they triumphantly declare, "I told you so."
Search for the guilty. They tend to blame anyone for their problems: the government, the boss, their spouse, their parents, circumstances, but never themselves. They often act as a provocateur in communication, deliberately drawing people into negativity, infecting them with their pessimism. In such moments, they act as a secret agent of the dark forces,
helping them to connect new victims to their destructive network. Remember our example with the mobile phone searching for a cellular network. This list is not for judging others. It is so that when you see these signs in someone, you can honestly ask yourself, is there something similar in me?
The mechanism of reinforcing negative patterns. Behind any prolonged dwelling on negative thoughts, as a rule, there is some specific event or series of events to which your subconscious has assigned a high level of significance. As we have already said, the higher the significance, the stronger the energetic charge of the event, and the easier it is for the dark forces to periodically stir up this event in your memory, forcing you to relive the pain, resentment, fear, anger, rage, or disappointment over and over again.
Your subconscious, in its natural mode, tries to digest this event, gradually, piece by piece, reducing its significance and filing it away in the archives of memory. But you, being under the influence of the dark forces, unwittingly interfere. You seem to bring this event to the forefront again and again, forcing the subconscious to redigest it. And this process becomes endless. And the dark forces actively help you in this, and you don't even realize it.
Distortion of the significance of events. But the most insidious thing happens at an even deeper level. Having established a stable connection with your subconscious, the dark forces gain the ability to influence the very process of assigning significance. If before your subconscious evaluated any event based on your real-life context, your experience, values, social status, opportunities, now new assistants are interfering in this process. They begin to lobby for their own interests, forcing your subconscious to work according to distorted rules.
To any negative event, even a minor one, they force the subconscious to assign a heightened coefficient of significance, artificially blowing it up to the size of a tragedy. And to any positive event, on the contrary, a lowering coefficient is assigned, downplaying its significance and turning it into a trivial trifle.
As a result, over time, the balance in your inner world is disrupted. You become that very walking negativity. Why? Because huge logs of negative events are constantly burning in your thinking, while the sparks of positivity are extinguished almost as soon as they flare up. You stop noticing the good, as the subconscious now labels it as unimportant, and you get stuck for a long time on any little thing that went wrong because it seems like a catastrophe to you. That is why, for such a person, the glass will always be not just half empty, but terrifyingly empty, which will cause them irritation, anxiety, and despondency. Ultimately, the dark forces reconfigure all the gears in your subconscious in such a way that it, on complete autopilot, by inertia, continues to overstate the significance of the bad and understate the significance of the good. This creates a self-sustaining cycle of negativity that is very difficult to break without special effort.
The result of self-diagnosis, an honest look at yourself. So let's summarize this first diagnostic step. Honestly answer a few questions for yourself. Are you prone to dwelling on negative thoughts and memories for long periods in your head? Do you feel that you are stuck in a black streak? Did you recognize yourself in the portrait of a walking negativity? Have you noticed that you tend to exaggerate the scale of failures and downplay the importance of your joys and successes? If you answered yes to at least a couple of these questions, this is a serious reason to think. This is not a sentence, but just a diagnosis, and as in medicine, a correct diagnosis is already half the cure. To admit that a problem exists and that its root lies not in the external world, but in a disruption of your internal mechanism, even if provoked from the outside, is the very first and most necessary step towards healing. The advantages of realizing the situation. Self-diagnosis is not just a statement of the fact that dark forces are influencing your subconscious. It is a powerful tool of awakening, the first step to liberation. When you begin to realize that your constant negative thinking is not your true nature, but the result of external influence, this already creates the first crack in the house that the dark forces have built in your subconscious. Realization also helps you see the specific mechanisms through which this influence occurs. You begin to notice how you automatically pick up negative thoughts, how you inflate the significance of unpleasant events, how you ignore positive moments. This awareness is the first ray of light penetrating the dark labyrinth through which the dark forces have been leading you. It is important to understand that self-diagnosis is not a reason for self-flagellation or even greater immersion in negativity. How could I let this happen? I am so weak. I will never succeed. Such a reaction will only play into the hands of the dark forces, providing them with a new portion of negative emotions. Instead, treat the discovery of your condition as an important step on the path to freedom, as valuable knowledge that gives you the strength to change. Signs of the beginning of liberation. When you honestly admit the existence of the problem and begin to understand the mechanisms of influence of the dark forces, you may notice the first signs of the beginning of liberation. Moments of awakening. You start to catch yourself having negative thoughts, noticing their automatic appearance. Pauses of awareness. A small pause appears between an event and your emotional reaction, in which you can choose how to react. Questions to yourself. You start asking yourself questions like, does this event really deserve such a reaction? Why am I so fixated on this? A new perspective on the familiar. You notice how much negativity there was in your thinking and how it affected your life. The first rays of positivity. You begin to notice pleasant moments that previously passed your attention. These signs may be barely noticeable, but they are extremely important. They are the first signs that the connection with the dark forces is beginning to weaken, that you are ceasing to be a passive recipient of their influence. Transition to active actions. Self-diagnosis is a necessary, but only the first, step on the path to liberation from the influence of the dark forces. By realizing and accepting this, you are already depriving the dark forces of their main advantage, stealth. Now you know the enemy by sight and understand the principle of their operation. And this means that you are ready to move on to the next stage, to the study of specific tools that will help you do a general cleaning of your subconscious. Break the stable connection with them, driving them out of the well-appointed little house like uninvited tenants, and regain control over your life. This brings us to the next, most practical stage of our journey. Let's move on to the section, Step 2, Tools for Healing. Chapter 6. Step 2. Tools for Healing. A general cleaning of the subconscious. In the previous chapter, we conducted a self-diagnosis. This was a very important, though perhaps not easy, step. To admit that uninvited guests have settled in your inner house and that all the settings have been knocked off kilter towards negativity requires considerable courage. But now that the diagnosis has been made and the enemy, as they say, is known by sight, we can move from theory to the most important part, the practice of healing. In this second step, we will not directly fight the dark forces. That would be like trying to catch the wind with your hands, pointless and energy draining. Our strategy will be much wiser and more effective. We will begin to purposefully change the environment itself within our subconscious.
we will stop generating food for them and will start systematically filling our inner world with such powerful positive energy that it will become simply unbearable for the dark forces to be there. We will conduct such a general cleaning and renovation in our inner house that they will be forced to leave it on their own, unable to withstand the purity and light.
How do we do this? Through conscious and regular integration of actions that bring you positive emotions and new experiences. It's important to understand, simply deciding not to think about the bad won't work, as we've already discussed. We will act through the physical level, through real activities, hobbies, and sensations that compel your subconscious to shift from dwelling on negativity to processing new positive information. Important. At this second step, you need to physically identify, recall, and pinpoint the activities and hobbies that evoke positive emotions and sensations for you, without harming your health. Since we are all unique, this list must be strictly personal. What brings joy to one person may leave another indifferent or even irritated. To achieve this, we will assemble your personal healing arsenal, consisting of light artillery for daily defense and heavy artillery for powerful breakthroughs.
Light artillery, your daily amulets. First, you need to compile a list of simple, accessible, and personally enjoyable activities that can provide you with small but steady doses of positive emotions. These are your daily amulets, your protective charms. Their purpose is to create a constant background hum of positive vibrations, disrupting the dark force's ability to maintain a stable connection with you. Think of it as daily hygiene for the soul. Since we are all different, you must create this list for yourself. Don't focus on what's common or trendy. Seek what resonates with you. Here are a few ideas for inspiration.
Culinary pleasures. A morning ritual with aromatic coffee or tea, preparing a favorite dessert, experimenting with new recipes, tasting unusual foods, creating beautiful table settings, even for an ordinary breakfast. Media therapy. Watching beloved films or series, especially comedies and inspiring stories, listening to uplifting music, or immersing yourself in audiobooks with captivating plots. Reading. Dive into a book that genuinely enthralls you, not one you should read. Revisit a favorite film or series that warms your heart. Browse colorful photo albums or art books. Digital detox and content. Avoid negative news and instead watch travel or nature channels or enjoy compilations of funny and adorable animal videos.
Water rituals. A relaxing bath with aromatic oils, an invigorating contrast shower, swimming in a pool, visiting a sauna, or simply splashing cool water on your face during moments of tension. Physical activity. Morning exercises to your favorite music, dancing, even solo at home. Leisurely biking or rollerblading in the park. A peaceful walk through the forest or along charming city streets. Creativity and hobbies. Playing the guitar, drawing or coloring, embroidery, knitting, model building, tending to houseplants. Nature connection. Mini gardening on your windowsill, growing herbs or microgreens, caring for indoor plants. Bird watching, short trips to a nearby park, watching sunsets and sunrises. Pleasant socializing. Calling or meeting a friend whose conversation leaves you feeling lighter, spending time with relatives you enjoy. Small physical joys. A DIY foot massage, applying fragrant cream or oil, using natural scrubs, brushing your hair with a special brush, stretching tense muscles. Playful moments. Puzzles that give a sense of achievement, card games, board games with pleasant company, short mobile games that bring genuine enjoyment without causing addiction. Micro-adventures.
exploring a neighboring district's streets, visiting a new cafe or shop, discovering unique architectural details in your city, taking an unusual route to work. Simple meditative practices. 3 minutes of mindful breathing, cloud gazing, listening to nature sounds, handling smooth stones or seashells, watching candle flames.
A crucial note. For these amulets to work, you must constantly vary and refresh them. Remember, the subconscious thrives on processing new information. If you re-watch the same film 10 times or walk the same park path every day, the effect will fade over time. The subconscious will grow accustomed, and the novelty, along with the bright positive response, will disappear. So strive to diversify your daily rituals. Why this works? Pleasant sensations and emotions help the subconscious interrupt the flow of negative thoughts, even briefly, forcing it to switch to processing new information. This allows you to periodically disconnect from the network, like that mobile phone, disrupting the stable connection with the dark forces.
Moreover, positive emotions help deplete the energetic charge of negative events currently circulating in your mind, which sustains the dark forces link. Imagine each positive experience as a bucket of water poured onto the bonfire of negative thoughts they so diligently maintain in your thinking. However, for complete extinguishing the campfire, daily rituals alone may not suffice, especially in early stages when their influence is still relatively weak. They should absolutely be part of your life, ideally daily, but for more significant impact, we'll need heavy artillery. Heavy artillery. Evolutionary triggers for a reboot. In particularly advanced cases, when you're deeply stuck in a black streak, the previously mentioned activities might not elicit much of a positive response. This is normal. It means that the level of negative energy is so high that light artillery is no longer enough. In such situations, we need to move on to heavy tools, to stimuli embedded in us by evolution itself. They can break through the armor of apathy and almost forcibly initiate positive reactions in the subconscious, bypassing resistance, whether you want to or not. Here are the most powerful of them. First, contact with animal babies and young animals. Play with small puppies, kittens, or other animal babies. Visit friends who have such pets or go to animal shelters. Bring treats with you and spend time playing specifically with young animals. Our subconscious is evolutionarily programmed to react positively to newly emerged life, especially when the babies are clearly happy to see you and seek contact. This activates ancient mechanisms of care and protection, triggering the production of oxytocin and other happiness hormones.
An important caution: try not to acquire animals for your home permanently if you don't have a deep love for them. Over time, your subconscious will adapt, get used to them, and they will no longer evoke such vivid positive emotions. Moreover, they might start to irritate you when they relieve themselves in the wrong place, wake you up early in the morning, or demand attention at an inconvenient time. Therefore, be careful. Sometimes it's easier to periodically visit shelters or friends with pets than to take on permanent responsibility. You should only get an animal if you genuinely love them. Then it's truly a good decision.
Second, interaction with infants and small children. Visit relatives or friends who have small children. Even simply observing infants activates the baby face effect in our subconscious. Large eyes, chubby cheeks, small facial features, all these signs trigger an innate mechanism of tenderness and care. Even the grumpiest person will involuntarily smile if an infant reaches out to them or gives a toothless grin. This effect is so strong that it's even used in the design of cartoon characters and toys to elicit sympathy from us.
This is no accident. Our brain is literally programmed to react to children's facial features with positive emotions.
Third, the healing power of water. The lapping of waves, the gurgling of a stream, the roar of a waterfall, all these sounds have a calming effect on us. Our ancestors survived near bodies of water. Water is a symbol of life, purity, safety, and tranquility. The sounds and sight of flowing water have a powerful soothing and healing effect on our subconscious. Visit natural places near water, especially where you can hear the sound of waves or the gurgling of a stream. This will give your subconscious the opportunity to enjoy, on an almost reflexive level, familiar sounds that have been associated with safety and well-being for hundreds of thousands of years. Even if you can't get out into nature, you can create a mini ritual with water at home. Fill a bathtub, light candles, and fully immerse yourself in the sensations. Install a small indoor fountain. Listen to recordings of nature sounds with the sound of water.
Fourth, the magic of fire. For thousands of years, fire meant warmth, protection from predators, cooking, and the center of the community. Just like water, our subconscious reacts to fire in a calming and positive way. A bonfire in nature, whether at a dacha or in the forest, has a particularly strong effect. Sitting by a bonfire is humanity's oldest social ritual. Observing the dancing flames puts the brain into an almost meditative state, reducing the activity of the brain regions responsible for anxiety and worry. If it's not possible to light a real bonfire, alternatives include a fireplace, candles, or even a video recording of burning fire, although the effect will be significantly weaker.
Fifth, hunting instinct, shopping and acquisitions. Visiting stores and acquiring new things can be a powerful positive stimulus. Our brain is evolutionarily programmed to derive pleasure from prey. This is an echo of ancient hunting instincts. The very process of searching, choosing, and finally capturing the desired item activates the reward system in the brain. However, caution is necessary here. You must have available finances that you don't mind parting with. If you don't have enough money and start spending it thoughtlessly, it will subsequently lead to even greater negative experiences. It's important to understand the value of this experience lies not in the purchases themselves, but in the process. It's a kind of hunt, and our brain reacts positively to this process. The prey itself won't cause long-lasting joyous emotions. Our subconscious quickly gets used to it.
It's better to spend several days browsing different, and they must be different, stores, and at the end acquire a small item as a symbolic reward, rather than spending all your money, feeling happy for one day, and being left with debt. Remember that the subconscious will neutralize the influence of positive emotions from purchases within a few days, filing away information about these acquisitions in its place. Your spending should not exceed your means. When buying something, you must be sure that you'll have enough money for a comfortable existence until your next paycheck. And importantly, don't visit the same stores regularly. Remember the novelty factor.
Sixth, the grandeur of nature. Contemplating mountains, the starry sky, an endless field. When we see something vast and eternal, our subconscious instinctively switches scale. Our personal problems begin to seem less significant, minor and fleeting against the backdrop of nature's grandeur. This is a powerful way to reset the exaggerated significance of negative events. For example, climb to the highest point in your city and look at the view from above. You will be pleasantly surprised. Seventh, handicrafts and creativity. Clay modeling, drawing, woodworking. When we create something with our hands, we enter a special state of flow.
The consciousness becomes silent, giving way to a direct dialogue between the subconscious, the body, and the material. This is a powerful therapy that helps to reboot a repetitive thought process. Additional evolutionary triggers for positivity. Sunlight and natural light. Our body is evolutionarily attuned to the cycles of day and night. Sunlight stimulates the production of serotonin, a hormone associated with a good mood. Spend more time in natural light, especially in the first half of the day. Even 15 to 20 minutes in the morning sun can significantly improve mood and sleep. Physical contact and touch. Humans are social creatures, and touch is critically important for our emotional well-being. Hugs, massage, even a simple handshake stimulate the production of oxytocin, which reduces stress levels. If there's no opportunity for human contact, even stroking a soft blanket or contact with pleasant textures activates sensory receptors.
Rhythmic movements. Walking, swimming, swaying, dancing. Rhythmic movements calm the nervous system. This is because our brain evolved in conditions of constant movement, and certain rhythmic patterns signal safety to it. Even simply rocking in a rocking chair can reduce anxiety. Laughter and humor. Laughter is a powerful mechanism for releasing endorphins. It not only reduces the level of stress hormones, but also strengthens the immune system. Look for opportunities to laugh. Comedy shows, funny videos, jokes, spending time with people with a good sense of humor. Deep breathing and lung expansion. Deep breaths signal safety to the brain, activating the parasympathetic nervous system responsible for relaxation. Our ancestors breathed deeply only in safe environments. In danger, breathing became shallow and fast. 5 minutes of deep, conscious breathing can significantly reduce stress levels. Music and rhythmic sounds. The human brain is extremely sensitive to music. Certain rhythms and melodies can instantly change our emotional state. Music with a frequency of around 60 beats per minute has a particularly strong effect. It synchronizes with our heartbeat at rest. Sense of nature. The smells of the forest, the sea, freshly cut grass, certain flowers and herbs activate the brain's limbic system, which is associated with emotions and memory. Evolutionarily, pleasant natural aromas were associated with safety and fertility. Even short exposure to natural aromas can significantly improve mood. Clearing the debris, dealing with unfinished business. There is another crucial aspect of this general cleaning. Besides adding new positivity, we need to eliminate old sources of negativity. We are talking about those unfinished matters that constantly hang over you like a sword of Damocles, poisoning your life with their silent reproach. These could be any obligations you were supposed to fulfill but constantly postponed, neglected documents, a promise made to a relative, minor home repairs, an unpleasant conversation, a visit to the doctor. Each such matter is a small, energetic vampire. It constantly reminds you of itself, creating a background feeling of guilt, anxiety, and self-dissatisfaction. This continuous mental noise is ideal food for the dark forces, supporting their presence in your subconscious. It is important to understand the dark forces love this state. Laziness and procrastination, which prevent you from completing these tasks, are their favorite tools. They will plant thoughts like, "I'll do it tomorrow. It's not that important. I don't have the strength now." What to do? Conduct a review and start acting. Make a list. Honestly write down all the matters that are hanging over you and causing tension. Do not try to do everything at once. This is a trap. Trying to clear all the debris at once will lead to overload and most likely to failure, which will only cause a new round of self-flagellation. Choose the simplest task. Find a task on the list that requires minimal effort and just do it. Show willpower.
Feel the relief. By completing even one such task, you will feel an incredible surge of energy and a sense of pride in yourself. It's as if you've taken a heavy backpack off your shoulders. This is a powerful positive signal for your subconscious. I am in control of the situation. I am the master of my life. Gradually, step by step, clear this debris. One task every few days or even a week. The main thing is not to stop. Every completed task is another channel through which your energy was leaking, now permanently blocked. This is the most important part of freeing yourself from mental burden and reclaiming your power.
Returning to forgotten hobbies. Perhaps you thought to yourself just now, I used to have hobbies, but I abandoned them. Why does this happen? Because when you get hooked by the dark forces, your hobbies that bring positive emotions become a direct threat to them. They prevent them from fully settling in your subconscious. Therefore, the dark forces, using your own hands through planted thoughts, no time, no money, I'm too tired, this is no longer interesting, gradually push everything that brings joy out of your life, immersing you in a gray daily routine. Recall those settings in the subconscious that we discussed in the previous chapter. The dark forces have gradually reconfigured your inner gears so that you become walking negativity.
Look at your life from the outside, and you will see that only routine, everyday worries, and absolutely nothing new remain in it, as well as a whole bunch of excuses in the form of thoughts about why this happened or why you supposedly like the current state of affairs. This is a typical picture of a person under the influence of the dark forces. That is why you need to consciously and forcibly shake off this routine and start adding something new or well-forgotten old things into your life. Initially, many of these activities may not bring vivid emotions, especially if you're in deep apathy. But even if they simply bring you into a neutral state, stopping the flow of negative thoughts even for a while, that is already a huge victory. Soul's hints. Listen to the feeling when you miss something. Pay attention to moments when you experience a feeling of boredom or longing for certain places, people, or activities. These are not just random emotions. These are valuable signals from your subconscious, a kind of hint about where you can find sources of positive emotions. If you suddenly catch yourself thinking, I haven't been to the mountains, to the sea, to that cozy cafe in a long time, this is not just a memory. Your subconscious is literally pointing to a place where you once experienced positive emotions and where you can experience them again. The same applies to people. If you miss someone, perhaps communicating with that person truly filled you with energy and joy.
Do not ignore these signals. The dark forces will try to drown them out with phrases like, come on, it's too far to go there. Or, he or she is probably busy, don't bother them. But it is precisely such moments of longing that often point to those very hints that a powerful positive emotion is anchored for you in that very place. Make a list of places, people, and activities that you periodically miss. This is your personal map of positive energy sources. Start consistently visiting these places, renewing contact with these people, and returning to these activities, and you will see how quickly your emotional state begins to change. The importance of physical actions instead of mental control. A key point: we cannot consciously control our thoughts for a long time. A maximum of 3 to 5, 10 minutes, and then you will return to negative reflections again without even noticing the transition.
We have already discussed this in the section on the subconscious and the nature of thoughts. And this means that any of your attempts at the level of consciousness to simply order yourself, "Don't think about bad things," are doomed to failure. No matter how hard you try, you will not be able to force yourself with willpower to avoid rumination on negative thoughts in your head for a long time.
That is why it is so important to find interests or hobbies that will physically force the subconscious to switch from grinding negative thoughts to a neutral state or positive emotions. It's like pressing a reboot button. This will help to more quickly dissipate the negative energy charge in your subconscious, replacing it with positive experiences. Don't forget to also give your subconscious new places, routes, and impressions. Processing new information and packaging it is a favorite activity of the subconscious, which it performs with special attention. Knowing this feature, we must deliberately use it as a kind of vulnerability of the system. However, do not choose places that you clearly dislike. It is better to visit those that evoke at least a little interest. Give your subconscious a chance to get acquainted with them, and it will thank you with positive emotions.
The principle of replacing negativity with positivity. Imagine this situation. You lost your expensive phone and are very worried about it. But on the way home, you suddenly find $1 million in a box. Believe me, your sadness would vanish in an instant, and your joy would be boundless. Of course, this is an unrealistic scenario, but as an illustration of the mechanism of emotion replacement, it works perfectly. The negative significance of losing the phone would instantly be overshadowed/faded/expended by finding a large sum of money. That's how positive moments work. They extinguish the negative charge, replacing it. The more positive moments you can bring into your life, the faster you will break the stable connection with the dark forces and free yourself from their influence.
Overcoming resistance. Be prepared for the dark forces to actively hinder your new actions, trying to keep you in your usual daily routine. They are not interested in you starting to apply the described methods, adding new information or activities that bring a positive response to the subconscious. But if you have a sincere desire to change your life, to get out of a prolonged black streak, you will certainly find the strength to overcome this resistance and start acting, gradually cleansing your subconscious of their influence. Remember, a simple solution at the level of consciousness to forbid yourself from thinking about bad things will not help. This is an absolutely useless technique. Only concrete actions on a physical level, hobbies, and new impressions will help you turn the situation in your favor.
Practical action plan. Having gathered the entire arsenal of tools that evoke pleasant emotions in you, distribute them throughout the week so that each day brings a new event or activity. It is extremely important not to repeat them too often. Remember that our subconscious loves novelty or forgotten old things. Daily repetition of the same hobby will lead to its devaluation and reduced effectiveness. Create not just a list, but a real schedule for the week, where each day is a new small adventure or a pleasant ritual. Novelty is your main weapon. Here is an example of such a schedule.
Monday. Visit an animal shelter, play with puppies, help care for them. In the evening, 15 minutes with your favorite book and a cup of aromatic tea. Tuesday. Go shopping, not for purchases, but for hunting, choosing beautiful things, trying them on, enjoying the process. A small purchase as a reward. In the evening, watch a new episode of your favorite series. Wednesday. Visit relatives, grandparents, or friends who were genuinely happy to see you. Join tea party, sharing news, heartfelt conversation. At home, an aromatic bath with essential oils. Thursday. An exploratory walk to new places in your city, a park you've never been to, an unfamiliar area with interesting architecture. Photographing unusual details. In the evening, 5 minutes of meditation with deep breathing.
Friday. Culinary experiment. Cooking a new dish according to an interesting recipe. Beautiful serving. Enjoying the process and the result. In the evening, 10 minutes of stretching to calm music. Saturday. A trip to the water, the sea, a river, or a lake. Contemplating the surface of the water. Listening to the sounds of nature. Meditative observation of the waves. And home, drawing your impressions of the day, even if you can't draw. Sunday, a trip out of town, to the forest or park. A picnic, a bonfire if possible. Observing the fire, enjoying the forest aromas and sounds. In the evening, planning the next week, filled with new positive moments. This is just a template. Fill it with your activities, alternating between light and heavy artillery. Your task is, through physical actions, to help the subconscious forcibly switch to processing new and, preferably, positive information.
Remember this important point once again. Your task is through physical actions to help the subconscious forcibly switch to processing new and preferably positive information. As we said, positive events, especially strong ones, are able to instantly extinguish or overshadow the negative charge from old problems festering in your subconscious and poisoning your life. But the opposite is also true. A large number of weak positive events can also gradually change minus to plus. It is also important to include work with unfinished business in your plan. Allocate 1 day a week, for example, Saturday morning, when you will deal with one specific task from your list of debts. Do not try to do everything at once. This is a sure path to disappointment and a return of negative emotions. Gradually, step by step, you will free yourself from this burden, receiving a dose of positive emotions each time you complete another task. The importance of sufficient sleep. And last but not least in this section, none of the above tools will work to their full potential if you do not ensure quality, sufficient sleep. Sleep is the foundation of your mental and physical health. Modern scientists have proven that it is during sleep that our brain cleanses neuroconnections of toxic waste products and reboots the emotional system. If a person is chronically sleep-deprived, their ability to self-control decreases. Emotional reactivity sharply increases, meaning they become more irritable, anxious, and vulnerable to negativity, and the ability to perceive positive moments decreases. A sleep-deprived brain simply cannot appreciate the beauty of a sunset or the joy of meeting a friend. In fact, lack of sleep makes us much more vulnerable to negative thoughts and emotions, precisely what the dark forces are aiming for. Therefore, make healthy sleep your priority. Try to go to bed and wake up at the same time. Create a comfortable sleep environment, a cool, quiet, dark room. Avoid bright light, especially blue spectrum from screens, 1 to 2 hours before bed. Develop a calming evening ritual, a warm bath, reading, light stretching. Limit caffeine intake in the afternoon. Good sleep is not a luxury, but a necessity in your struggle to free yourself from the influence of the dark forces. It is the foundation upon which all other practices are built.
To summarize, by following these recommendations, you will begin to systematically destroy the favorable environment for the dark forces. Initially, their connection with your subconscious will become intermittent, and then, deprived of constant nourishment, they will be forced to completely disconnect from you. You will gradually shake off the dust of your past life, begin to come alive, and your life will inevitably improve. But cleansing your house of uninvited guests is only half the battle. Now that the subconscious is free from destructive influence, it is ready to become your most powerful ally in building a new, happy reality. How do you give it the right direction? How do you teach it to work for creation? This brings us to the next inspiring stage of our journey. Let's move on to the section, Step 3, Dream.
Chapter 7, Step 3, Dream. Designing a new reality. The power of dreams. So, we have completed 2 crucial stages. In the first step, we performed self-diagnosis and, as if turning on the light in a dark room, saw the true state of affairs. In the second step, we acquired a whole arsenal of tools for healing, with which we began a general cleaning in our inner house, destroying the favorable environment for the dark forces and breaking the stable connection with them. We learned to clear our field of weeds. Now it is time to do the most important thing, to plant the seeds of our brightest and boldest desires in this fertile, cleared soil. It is time to dream. Regularly set aside time to visualize your future, how you would like to see it. Dream about family, a house, a car, a career, travel, relationships, creative self-realization. Everything that evokes an inner response and anticipation of joy within you. You might be surprised, but dreaming is not an idle pastime. It is one of the most powerful tools for interacting with your subconscious. If processing new information is its favorite work, then working with dreams and plans is its favorite creative activity. When you begin to dream, your subconscious enthusiastically plunges into its boundless library, begins to sort through all the books of your experience, knowledge, and abilities to compile for you the best, most beautiful, and desired image of the future. This practice becomes especially effective if you don't just dream, but also ask your subconscious guiding questions. How can I reach this dream? What steps will help me implement this plan? By doing this, you encourage your subconscious not just to create pleasant images, but also to build bridges between your present and desired future. That is, to truly work for you and not against you.
Soul warm-up, starting with playful dreams. After a long period in a black streak, the mechanism of dreaming and planning in your subconscious may have, figuratively speaking, rusted. Perhaps you yourself have noticed how difficult it has become to imagine something truly good, bright, desirable. Fears, resentments, a sense of deadlock obscured the horizon. It has long been suppressed or used by the dark forces to create destructive scenarios. Therefore, do not immediately rush into building grandiose and serious life plans. Start with a warm-up. Allow yourself to dream in the morning after waking up, or in the evening before sleep. Let these even be playful, unrealistic dreams. Flying on a dragon, building a castle out of chocolate, befriending dolphins. The goal at this stage is not to come up with a real plan, but simply to start the process itself. To let the stagnant gears of your subconscious spin up. To shake off the rust of apathy and negativity. Allow yourself this luxury, to dream simply for pleasure, like in childhood, without criticism and limitations.
Integration of consciousness and subconscious. Gradually, when the mechanisms of the subconscious begin to work freely again, it will produce increasingly realistic and constructive dreams, plans, and ideas that will truly help you move to a new, higher quality of life. And what is especially important, now this work will happen without the harmful influence of the dark forces. When you feel that your inner state has become predominantly calm and bright, it is time for true co-creation.
Now your subconscious and consciousness are not adversaries in an eternal struggle of want and must, but two powerful partners. Now you can not just dream, but also ask your subconscious concrete questions. How can we reach this dream? What is the first step? What are the ways? And your subconscious, freed from external influence, will begin to build bridges to your goals and dreams. It will plant intuitive hunches, creative ideas, sudden insights in your mind.
And your consciousness, in turn, will perform its important work. It will accept these ideas, analyze them with critical thinking. Is this reasonable? Is it logical? What are the risks? Turn them into concrete steps and apply willpower and self-discipline for their implementation. This alliance of intuitive want from the subconscious and rational must from the consciousness will turn you into a true virtuoso who masterfully navigates the labyrinth of life, intuitively bypassing dangerous turns and consciously choosing paths that lead to positive events.
Life without interference. You will notice how, when the dark forces lose influence over your subconscious, life gradually begins to improve. The subconscious now more clearly builds plans and solutions for upcoming tasks as interference from the dark forces disappears. Your consciousness takes their place, receiving all the privileges for this role. This is like riding a bicycle on a road where all obstacles have suddenly disappeared. Previously, your path was littered with potholes and stones, and someone was constantly throwing sticks into your wheels from the bushes, causing you to stumble and fall. Now, however, you simply ride forward calmly towards your dreams and goals. Perhaps the movement is not as rapid as you would like, but it is steady, confident, and, most importantly, without those painful incidents that used to knock you off your seat. With each passing day, you get closer and closer to your goals, and there's a special joy in this gradual but sure progress. Turning to the light forces, an open channel. Recall how we said at the beginning of the book, good rarely imposes itself into our lives. It primarily comes when we ourselves strive for it and ask for help. Evil, on the contrary, comes uninvited, without our permission. That is why in the third step, when you begin to build your new life, do not forget to ask the light forces for help and guidance, if this aligns with your worldview. Perhaps you have turned to them before, but received no answer and despaired. Most likely, this happened because your channel of communication was clogged with interference from the dark forces. Any light hints simply could not break through, or were ignored by your subconscious, which was under external guidance. Now, however, since you have disconnected from the negative network, like that very mobile phone, your subconscious becomes open to light, creative impulses. Of course, you can cope on your own, but if, on the way to your dream, you feel confused or need support, turn to the light forces. After all, just like the dark forces, they have a bird's-eye view of where you are in your labyrinth and what path will be best for you. Their hints can come in the form of a sudden idea, useful information in a book, a chance meeting, or simply an inner feeling of confidence in the right choice.
A crucial warning. And here I must give one very important warning. Before you seriously begin to make plans and make life-changing decisions, make sure that you have truly escaped the influence of the dark forces. Why is this so critical? Because if the stable connection with them has not yet been broken, then any of your brilliant ideas or grand plans might turn out to be a Trojan horse. The dark forces will gladly participate in forming this plan, but they will do so in a way that guarantees it will lead you to even greater failure and disappointment. Example number 1. You might suddenly get a brilliant idea after seeing an advertisement online to invest all your savings in some super profitable startup. You will feel incredible enthusiasm and confidence, but in the end, you will most likely lose all your money and be left with nothing.
Example number 2. It might seem to you that the only salvation is to drop everything and immediately move to another city, even though you have no job, no housing, and no support there. This idea will feel like a bold step toward a new life, but in reality, it may turn out to be a trap that leads you to isolation, loneliness, and even greater difficulties. Example number 3. You meet a person who evokes strong emotions in you. Something pushes you towards a rapid development of the relationship, ignoring alarming signals and red flags. You dive headfirst into this relationship, investing all your emotional and sometimes material resources. And after a while, you discover that this person is not at all who they claim to be, and you find yourself emotionally drained and disappointed.
How many times in your life have you caught yourself thinking that another idea was simply brilliant? Were you sure that it was your idea, or did it just come to you in a ready-made form? Was it not a clever plant? That is why so many seemingly grandiose ideas ultimately led to failure. Therefore, before making serious plans, return to step number 1 and conduct an honest self-diagnosis. If you still notice that you often and for a long time are dwelling on negative thoughts, do not rush into global changes. Continue to apply the tools from step number 2, cleansing your inner space.
Signs of successful liberation. How can you tell that you have truly liberated yourself from the influence of the dark forces and are ready to build new plans? Pay attention to the following signs. Emotional stability. Your emotional reactions become more balanced. You no longer explode over trifles and can remain calm in situations that previously caused a storm of negative emotions. Improved sleep. You fall asleep easier, sleep deeper, and wake up more rested. Nightmares and anxious dreams disappear or significantly decrease. Natural optimism. You begin to notice the good in everyday situations without special effort. This is not naive rosiness, but a healthy balance of perception, where you see both positive and negative aspects, but do not dwell on the latter. Return of energy. You find that you have more physical and mental energy for tasks and activities that previously seemed exhausting. Revival of interest in life. Things, people, activities that for a long time caused no response in you begin to interest and delight you again.
Intuitive green signals. You begin to feel inner calm and confidence regarding your decisions, even if they require stepping out of your comfort zone. Synchronicity and coincidences. Small miracles and coincidences begin to occur in your life, helping you move in the chosen direction. Improved relationships. People begin to react to you differently. Relationships become more harmonious and supportive. If you notice most of these signs, it means that the process of liberation is going successfully, and you can gradually move on to more serious planning of your future.
Protecting achieved progress. It is important to remember that even after successfully breaking the connection with the dark forces, it is necessary to maintain your defense system in an active state. Continue to regularly use the tools from step number 2. They will now become not only a means of liberation, but also a prevention against falling under the influence of the dark forces again. Imagine this as maintaining immunity. Even if you have fully recovered from a serious illness, you still continue to strengthen your body to prevent a relapse. You need to be especially careful during periods of life difficulties and stresses. It is then that the dark forces may try to re-establish their influence. At such moments, double the dose of positive practices and be especially vigilant about your thought patterns.
A new balance. Cooperation of all aspects of the personality. Having freed yourself from the influence of the dark forces, you will discover that your subconscious, consciousness, and connection with the light forces begin to work in a harmonious tandem. This is like a well-coordinated team, where each participant performs their function for the common good.
The subconscious offers creative solutions and intuitive insights. The consciousness analyzes and structures them using logic and critical thinking. And the light forces provide guiding hints in moments of uncertainty. This synergy creates a completely new quality of life where even obstacles and difficulties are perceived not as catastrophes, but as problems to solve or opportunities for growth. You begin to notice that even in difficult situations, you now find more constructive solutions that were previously inaccessible due to limited perception under the influence of the dark forces.
Completion of transformation. So, in the third step, you're not just dreaming, you are activating all aspects of your personality to create a new harmonious reality. You reclaim your right to determine your destiny, rather than being a passive puppet in the hands of the dark forces. Your life will gradually but steadily begin to improve. Decisions will be made easier. The right people and opportunities will appear as if by themselves. You will stop constantly running into dead ends and troubles, as if you have learned to bypass them. This process can be compared to restoring the original blueprint of a house that was distorted by unscrupulous builders. You remove all harmful changes and return to the original design, to who you were meant to be before the intervention of the dark forces.
Dream, plan, act, but do so consciously, with an understanding of the mechanisms we have discussed in this book. And remember, even the longest journey begins with the first step. Perhaps not all your dreams will come true instantly, but now each day will bring you closer to what you truly desire, rather than leading you away from it, as it was under the influence of the dark forces. Your life is your unique path through the labyrinth of life. And now that you know the secrets of navigating it, this path will become much more joyful and meaningful. At this point, the main practical stage of our journey is complete. In the concluding chapter, 8, Epilogue, we will summarize and reinforce everything you have learned so that you can confidently move along a new, bright path.
Chapter 8, Epilogue. Your compass in the labyrinth of life, a postscript for a new path. And so, our journey through the intricate corridors of the labyrinth we call life has come to an end. We began this path with a feeling of confusion, perhaps despair, with the question that led you here: how to get out of the black streak. Now I hope you hold in your hands not just an answer, but a whole set of keys and a detailed map of your inner house. Together, we have completed 3 crucial steps. In step number 1, self-diagnosis, we learned to honestly look at ourselves and recognize the signs that indicate uninvited guests have settled in our inner house. We understood how and why this happens.
In step number 2, tools for healing, we assembled our personal arsenal for a general cleaning in the subconscious. We learned how, with the help of light and heavy artillery of positive experiences, we can destroy the favorable environment for the dark forces and break the stable connection with them. And in step number 3, dream, we did the most important thing. We moved from defense to creation. We learned to dream anew, transforming our liberated subconscious from a passive executor into a powerful ally on the path to a happy life. Now you know how to identify the problem, how to eliminate its cause, and how to start building the reality you've always dreamed of. But our work doesn't end here. It's just beginning. Life after the black streak, the art of vigilance.
Having stepped onto the bright path, one should not forget that the labyrinth hasn't disappeared. In your life, you will still sometimes encounter troubles, toxic people, or negative events. The dark forces, having lost control over you, will not abandon their attempts to regain it. They will try to reconnect you to their network through their secret agents, people who will try to infect you with their negativity, or through unexpected problems that can knock you off balance. Therefore, your main quality now should be conscious vigilance. But this is not the vigilance born of fear. It is the calm confidence of a person who knows the rules of the game.
Remember the main rule. You can get nervous somewhere, get upset, or even quarrel with someone. The manifestation of negative emotions is part of human nature. Only one thing is important. Do not carry this negativity with you into tomorrow. A brief flash of anger or sadness is just a short signal that you send into space, like that very mobile phone. The dark forces might notice it, but this short contact will not be enough for them to establish a stable connection and set up a home in your subconscious again. Important: do not carry thoughts from yesterday's negativity with you into tomorrow. As soon as a new day begins, you must leave all yesterday's grudges, irritations, and disappointments in the past. Otherwise, you risk falling under the influence of the dark forces again.
As soon as you feel that you are stuck in negative thoughts, immediately apply the tools from step number 2. A walk in a new park, a call to a friend, a cup of delicious tea, playing with a kitten. Any of your amulets will help you disconnect from the network and extinguish this signal. You won't give them a chance, and they won't succeed again, and everything will be fine with you. Your daily positive rituals are your main lifelong charm, your reliable protection. Imagine this as the beginning of a cold. If at the first symptoms you immediately take measures, rest, drink hot tea, provide support to your body, the illness can recede without fully developing. But if you ignore the first signs and continue to overload yourself, a simple indisposition will develop into a serious illness. The mechanism of protection from the dark forces works in exactly the same way.
Knowledge, your main weapon. Now you are armed with a complete set of tools for managing your life. You know how to recognize the influence of the dark forces through self-diagnosis. You have an arsenal of practical techniques for breaking the stable connection with them. You understand how to use the power of dreams and conscious planning to create a new, positive reality. These knowledge are not just theory, but a practical guide to action. They're like maps that help sailors avoid dangerous reefs and find safe harbors, even in the most turbulent seas. With their help, you can confidently plot your path through the labyrinth of life, bypassing traps and dead ends that previously seemed inevitable.
The dual nature of influence, contagion and protection. It is especially important to be aware of the dual nature of negative energy in our world. Being under the influence of the dark forces, you unwittingly become their conductor, infecting others with your negativity. Without realizing it, you begin to act as their secret agent, connecting ordinary people to this negative network through manifestations of irritation, stories of troubles, or coloring neutral events in dark tones. This is similar to a viral disease that seeks to spread as widely as possible. A person under the influence of the dark forces becomes an unwitting spreader of this virus, transmitting it through negative emotional interactions with others.
But the opposite is also true. If people radiating negativity come into your life, it may be an attempt by the dark forces to reestablish a connection with you.
This means that you periodically connect to the network, like a mobile phone, although you do not stay connected for a long time. The dark forces notice these moments of connection and try to establish a stable connection with you through their secret agents. This is why negative people or events sometimes appear in your life even after you have seemingly freed yourself from the influence of the dark forces. To significantly reduce their number, it is necessary to connect as rarely as possible and signal your location on the radars of the dark forces.
A new paradigm for understanding life's difficulties. The knowledge gained from this book gives you a completely new perspective for understanding life's difficulties. What once seemed like random bad luck or unfairness of fate now acquires concrete cause and effect relationships and, most importantly, solutions. You are no longer a helpless victim of circumstances or capricious fortune. You are an active participant in the process of shaping your reality who understands the mechanisms of influence of both destructive and creative forces. This understanding gives an amazing sense of inner freedom and strength. When you face difficulties, you will no longer waste energy on questions like, "Why is this happening to me?" or "Why does it always have to be me?" Instead, you will analyze the situation from the perspective of the knowledge gained and apply the appropriate tools to resolve it. This radically changes your effectiveness in overcoming obstacles.
And finally, I want to address you personally. To you who are reading these words right now, while your heart still feels heavy. To you who feel that life is unfair and the black streak seems endless, I want you to know you are not alone. What you're feeling is real. Your pain is not imagined, but your situation is not a life sentence. First and foremost, understand this. What's happening to you has an explanation, and far more importantly, a solution. Your suffering is neither random nor meaningless. It is not punishment or proof that you're somehow worse than others. It is the result of specific mechanisms we've explored in detail in this book. The hopelessness and the conviction that it will always be this way, these are not your true thoughts. These are precisely the thoughts the dark forces want you to think. They are part of their strategy to keep you trapped in their web. So the first step is awareness. This black streak is not permanent. It had a beginning, which means it will have an end.
The fact that you found at reading this book is no accident. It means your subconscious, your true self, is already desperately seeking a way out. It led you here. You already carry within you the strength that yearns for light. Please, don't despair. This book is not just text. It is a map of the labyrinth. It is a set of keys. Follow these 3 simple steps. Start with the smallest one. Don't expect instant miracles. Just take one tiny step each day. Today, brew yourself the most delicious cup of tea you've had in a long time. Tomorrow, walk down a street you've never explored. The day after, call someone whose voice you've been longing to hear. Each of these small actions is a pebble you place on the scales of light, and sooner or later, those scales will tip. The dark forces are powerful only as long as they operate in darkness and feed on our ignorance. By exposing their mechanisms to the light and starving them of their food, you reclaim full power over them.
Your life is in your hands, not in the hands of fate, not in the hands of circumstances, and certainly not in the hands of the dark forces. It lies in your thoughts, your feelings, and your daily small choices. May your labyrinth from now on be bright and full of wondrous discoveries. May your inner house always remain clean, cozy, and welcoming only to the light forces. And may the bicycle of your life carry you smoothly and joyfully along the road, toward your boldest and most beautiful dreams. Wishing you a kind journey. Afterword. Dear reader, as we conclude this book, I'd like to address those of you who may be atheists, agnostics, or simply people whose rational minds struggle with concepts like light forces and dark forces. That is absolutely normal. I want to emphasize a crucial point. No one is asking you to believe in the existence of dark forces, light forces, or any other metaphysical entities mentioned here. It is your personal right to accept or reject such explanations for life's processes, and I have no intention of trying to convince you otherwise. What matters most is that the practical steps outlined in this book work, regardless of how you choose to explain them. Step 1, self-diagnosis. Step 2, tools for healing. And Step 3, the power of dreams and planning, are effective, actionable methods to help you emerge from the black streak, even if you don't subscribe to the metaphysical framework I've presented.
You may interpret these phenomena through the lens of psychology, neuroscience, or any other scientific paradigm that aligns with your worldview. The core truth remains unchanged. Negative thought patterns tend to self-perpetuate, creating a vicious cycle of problems in our lives. The steps offered here help break that cycle and replace it with a positive one, gradually leading you toward greater happiness and harmony. I've shared my perspective on how these mechanisms operate internally based on my own experience and observations. This is my model for explaining why people fall into the path of misfortune and how to escape it. If this model resonates with you and helps you better understand these processes, wonderful. If another explanation feels more natural to you, that's equally valid. In the end, it's not the theoretical foundation that matters, but the practical result, escaping the streak of misfortune and returning to a full, joyful life. So I urge you to focus on the practical side of this book. Apply the tools for healing in your life and observe the changes that unfold. Because regardless of your beliefs, these steps truly work and can transform your life for the better. And remember, getting out of the black streak is not a matter of faith. It's a matter of consistent, deliberate action. Start doing what this book suggests, and the results will speak for themselves. I wish you luck on this journey, peace in your soul, and the courage to build the life you deserve. And now, you have all the tools to do so. With respect and warmest wishes, Dennis A.
So, you have completed the main journey through the Labyrinth of Life, and perhaps you have a question. Who is the person who guided you through these pages? On the official website, I have shared my story in detail. It was a journey of 17 years of research, personal tests, and observations that formed the basis of this book. So if you're interested in reading about it, follow the link to learn the whole backstory of how this book was created.
But our journey with you doesn't end here. On the website, another page awaits you, a living section with questions and answers that will be replenished thanks to you. Perhaps you still have questions? Or do you have your own unique tools and activities that make your subconscious switch from rumination on negativity to processing new, positive information? Leave comments under this video, and the most interesting questions and tips will appear on the website to help other readers. Let's create this useful space together.
Perhaps you want to reread the book or listen to it on the go as an audio course. On the website, in one of the sections, you will find everything you need. Especially for you, I have prepared the Labyrinth of Life in different formats, and all of it is absolutely free. You can download 3 PDF versions with different font sizes for your phone or for printing. Also available for you is the full audio version of the book, broken down by chapters. Choose what is convenient for you, and may this knowledge always be at hand. All links are on the official website.
And one more thing. I know that when the knowledge gained truly changes a life, many people have a sincere desire to thank the author. I myself was in such a situation when free programming lessons helped me more than expensive courses. Therefore, if this book proves useful to you, and if you feel such a response in your soul, you can support the project with any amount that is comfortable for you. All the details are on the website via the link below.